Hello everyone, today we will learn about another case. The case of Michelle Liu. In the San Diego, California area, Michelle Liu lived with her family, which included her parents, her brother Michael. The house was always full of life and laughter. Michelle's mother worked as a nurse and inspired her daughter to follow in her footsteps. After her mother died, Michelle decided to finish what her mother had started and see it through to the end. She became a source of support for her family, learning to drive, cooking, and always giving advice. Michelle is a nursing student at Samuel Merritt University in Oakland and is interning at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in Hayward. On May 27, 2011, after a long shift at the hospital, Michelle decided to quickly run to her car in the parking lot to get something. However, on her way to the car, she suddenly stopped, changed direction, and a few minutes later, a white Honda CR-V quickly drove out of the parking lot. When they began gathering all the students towards the end of her shift, Michelle was nowhere to be seen. Her personal belongings were left in the break room, her phone was not answering. This behavior was completely unlike her, and her instructor suspected something was wrong, so they immediately called the police. The next morning, 10 hours after Michelle's disappearance, there was still no news of her. Her brother and other relatives began searching for her, joining forces with the police and volunteers. Michelle's friends and colleagues came to the police station, clearly concerned about her disappearance. They insisted that her behavior had been too strange and that no one was willing to leave before a full investigation began. The officers quickly realized how serious the situation was. Traces of blood were found in the parking lot where her Honda had been parked. At about 9 a.m., they found her Honda's CR-V itself. It was locked and neatly parked in a visitor spot near an apartment building just a kilometer from the hospital. Inside the car were her laptop and someone else's student ID from Sal Merritt University, which lay on the back seat. Michelle had no connection to the owner of the ID, and it remained unclear why it was there. Later, it was discovered that the card had been stolen a couple of days before Michelle's disappearance. Most likely, the attacker had stolen the ID to gain access to the building and possibly lured Michelle to the parking lot before disappearing with her in her own car. Detectives immediately understood that this was not the work of a random criminal, but someone who knew her schedule well. The theory that someone had simply attacked her randomly in the parking lot seemed unlikely. Hospital records showed that 30 minutes after Michelle walked into the parking lot, the emergency room received a call. At 7:30 p.m., the emergency department received a call. The caller introduced herself as Michelle and asked to speak to the teacher. The nurse who answered the call informed the caller that she would need to transfer the call to another department, but the caller insisted that the nurse not do so. She mentioned that she just wanted the teacher to know that Michelle had called to inform her that Michelle would not be able to come back that night because she had received a message that her father had had a heart attack. When Michelle's car was being towed away for further examination, her brother Michael unexpectedly received a message from her phone, "I'm fine." Then another message came, "I'm not missing. The phone is glitching and has erased all data." These messages drained the battery. Shortly afterward, friends began receiving strange messages, one after another, claiming that she had a flat tire, that she was back in Reno, that she needed a break from social media, and that she was not feeling well and wanted to rest. Michelle's ex-boyfriend noticed the activity on her phone and immediately wrote to her, but the reply was, "Who is this?" By May 31st, the reward for information on Michelle's whereabouts had increased to $20,000, and after a few days, it reached almost $100,000. The family hired a private detective, and more than 100 volunteers joined the search, dividing into 14 teams to cover an area of several kilometers. The reward continued to grow. During the investigation into Michelle's relationships, one interesting detail emerged. She had problems with an old friend named Giselle Daiwag Esteban. The girls had been close for many years and even went to college together. Giselle was dating a man named Scott, and they had a 6-year-old daughter. However, their relationship had ended on a bad note, which sparked the issues between Michelle and Giselle. Long before Giselle and Scott started dating, Michelle had gone on a couple of dates with Scott but quickly realized that they were better suited as friends. There was never any romance or intimacy between them. Despite this, Giselle became obsessively jealous. Her behavior grew increasingly strange, and her relationship with Michelle began to deteriorate. Michelle continued to be friends with Scott and refused to stop communicating with him just because Giselle wanted her to. She ignored Giselle's strange and obsessive claims. When detectives came to Giselle to ask her a few questions, she did not hide her obvious antipathy towards Michelle and didn't even try to pretend otherwise. Giselle asserting that she had long asked Michelle to stay away from her daughter and to stop communicating with their mutual friends. She described their relationship as torment, calling Michelle a best friend who cheated on her with her ex-fiancé. The detectives then found Scott, who honestly shared his version of events. They noticed that he was sincerely worried and even participated in the search for Michelle, attending meetings and vigils organized in her honor. Scott shared how Giselle behaved towards him and his family. At some point, when their relationship reached another crisis, he tried to improve his relationship with Giselle for the sake of their daughter. However, these attempts always ended in failure. He showed the detectives a long correspondence with Giselle, where she constantly mentioned Michelle and wrote increasingly aggressive messages, such as, "I hope you find that nasty." Giselle accused Michelle of destroying their family and threatened that she would soon become unnecessary. Giselle even sent messages directly to Michelle, insulting her and accusing her of ruining her family. Additionally, she followed Michelle to San Diego. Scott also showed the police a recording of one of Giselle's outbursts of rage. In the recording, she was sitting in a car with their daughter in the back seat. Giselle insisted that Scott be honest about Michelle and threatened to kill them both if he lied about his relationship with Michelle. She gave him what she called a last and final warning. Scott stated that Giselle was temporarily placed in a psychiatric clinic, where she was diagnosed with manic depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. After that, Giselle continued to come to Scott's house, sometimes even going inside and just sitting in a room until she was noticed. Scott was able to achieve complete custody of their daughter, which further angered Giselle, prompting her to move back to Hayward to be closer to them. Just 3 days before Michelle went missing, Scott filed for a temporary restraining order against Giselle, claiming that she had threatened him and his family. On the same day, he accused Giselle of breaking into his home and into their daughter's room. The police continued to review CCTV footage in the hope of obtaining clear images of Michelle's car. Her brother did not believe that his sister could simply get lost, as she always stayed in touch with the family and even reminded them to call their grandmother on Mother's Day. A reward for any information about Michelle's whereabouts continued to grow, and the search remained active. The police still hoped to find Michelle alive, but the evidence they gathered indicated that their chances were diminishing with each passing day. Their worst fears were confirmed when traces of Michelle's blood were found in her car. They called her family and informed them that the case was no longer being treated as a disappearance. Nevertheless, Michelle's family, determined to continue searching for her and hoping for the best, refused to believe the worst until there was definitive proof. Giselle remained the only suspect in the case, and the police invited her for a full interrogation. By that time, she was already pregnant with her second child. During the conversation, she admitted that she was indeed at the hospital the night Michelle went missing, supposedly for a routine medical examination. When asked about their friendship, Giselle referred to Michelle as her sister but noted that their relationship had deteriorated due to a mistake made by Michelle and Scott. Giselle was released, but the police continued to monitor her, even installing a tracker on her car. Investigators believed she was connected to Michelle's disappearance, but they doubted whether she had acted alone due to her petite stature of only 158 centimeters. In the meantime, the police stepped up their investigation. They questioned Giselle's neighbors, who confirmed that Giselle and Michelle had been friends. Giselle told the press that she had nothing to do with Michelle's disappearance. Even her father joined the search for Michelle, flying in from Vietnam and calling on all local residents to help. An interesting turn of events occurred when Scott called the police and reported that he had found Michelle's phone in the back of his mother's car. Everything indicated that Giselle had planted it, since the tracker on her car showed that she had driven up to Scott's house several times. Security at the medical college where Michelle studied analyzed the data from the stolen student card, which had been used to access the building on May 26, the day before Michelle's disappearance. The cameras recorded Giselle. She had figured out the network technology and gained access to the card, stating that she was interested in enrolling. After receiving the card, Giselle began checking door locks, entering various classrooms, and inspecting the teacher's desk, where she found a student schedule, one of which belonged to Michelle. Now knowing the exact time when Michelle was supposed to be at college the next day, Giselle left the building. Analysis of phone data showed that on the day of her disappearance, Michelle and Giselle were in the same place at the same time. The next day, Giselle went into the Apple store and asked to unlock the iPhone, explaining to the technician that her daughter had accidentally locked her phone. After successfully unlocking it, Giselle left and went to Chuck E. Cheese, where cameras caught her texting. At the same time, Michelle's friends started receiving strange and obviously fake messages, which were confirmed by cell phone towers as coming from Michelle's phone. Despite there being no body, the police already had enough evidence to arrest Giselle Esteban for murder. When she was arrested at the front door of her home, a pair of shoes with Michelle's blood on the soles were also found in Giselle's car, along with a lock of Giselle's hair and her DNA on the steering wheel. Giselle had searched the internet for information on how to cause a heart attack without a trace, follow a person without being caught, and how to pick locks. She also searched for information on toxic gases such as potassium chloride and carbon monoxide. After Michelle went missing, her name was entered into the search bar more than 300 times. 10 days after Giselle's arrest, Michelle's remains were found in a shallow grave in a remote area, about 20 kilometers from Giselle's home. 3 months had passed, and the body was badly decomposed, so the exact cause of death could not be determined. The Alameda County coroner confirmed the identity of the remains in September 2011. Giselle Esteban appeared in court. She pleaded not guilty, claiming that the murder was an accident caused by a moment of anger and that Michelle allegedly provoked her. Her lawyer tried to prove that it was not a premeditated murder but one of chance. However, Giselle herself did not testify and appeared absolutely emotionless in court, without expressing a drop of remorse. Prosecutors assumed that Giselle had planned the attack in advance. She had tracked down Michelle, studied her schedule, waited for her to come out to the parking lot, and then attacked her with a sharp object. This explained the traces of blood, how she could load Michelle's body into the car and take it away. The prosecutor called Giselle a sociopath, noting her coldness and calculation. He emphasized that this was a carefully planned attack on a person who did not even suspect the danger. Giselle Esteban was found guilty of first-degree murder. She did not react to the verdict and left the courtroom in silence. At his sentencing hearing on December 10, Esteban was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the right to parole. Michelle's family was disappointed. They had hoped for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. With such a sentence, they would be forced to attend a parole hearing when she files the appropriate petition. Michelle's brother, Michael, was deeply distressed by the loss. He recalled how his sister had planned to follow in their late mother's footsteps and become a nurse to help people. For the family, the loss of Michelle was immense, and to this day, they hope that justice will prevail. Nothing can bring back their beloved sister and daughter. Michelle's dream of becoming a nurse and following in her mother's footsteps was cut short when Giselle killed her in the parking lot of a Bay Area hospital. It was a fit of jealousy when Giselle mistakenly thought that Michelle had started dating her boyfriend. Michelle's family plans to actively participate in the hearings to remind the judges how cruel this case is and to show how tragic their sister's fate is. The judge noted that in order to be released early, Giselle would have to show sincere remorse, which was not observed from her at the time of the trial. Shortly after her arrest, Giselle gave birth to a boy, who was handed over for adoption. There were rumors that Scott might have been the father, but he denied it, and the real father's name was never revealed. Lee's family continued to volunteer, helping other families dealing with missing loved ones and raising awareness of such cases. Michael said he was sure his sister was now in heaven with their mother, helping him come to terms with his loss and be less afraid of the future. Michelle's father has always been proud of her diligence and busy life but admits that he has never asked her to spend Father's Day with him. Now he regrets and dreams of turning back time, even just for one day, to invite her to enjoy this vacation together. After the trial, Michelle's family did not stop fighting for justice. They decided to direct their pain and anger toward creating an organization in her honor. The Michelle Lowe Foundation has become an important platform for helping families who have lost their loved ones and for those looking for missing relatives. They have organized annual events and fundraisers supporting search services, began advising other families, teaching them how to act correctly in the first hours after the disappearance of loved ones. Every year on Michelle's birthday, her friends, family, and those who were helped by the foundation gather together to remember her bright personality. It became not just a day of mourning but a celebration of her life, a day of support and love. People bring flowers and launch white balloons into the sky, symbolizing hope and memory. Scott, who was drawn into this terrible story, also took part in the work of the foundation. He decided to change his life and devote himself to raising his daughter. He actively participated in activities so that others would not face such a tragedy. As for Giselle, her chances for early release were minimal. Even after a while, her refusal to repent and emotional indifference made her a symbol of the destructive influence of hatred and envy. The story of how jealousy and unfounded suspicions can destroy lives became an important lesson for many, especially for those who suffer from toxic relationships and mistrust. Ultimately, despite all the tragedy, Michelle's light continued to illuminate the path for others. Her story and memory became a source of strength and inspiration, reminding everyone that love and compassion are stronger than hatred and jealousy. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Justine Valdez. On May 19, 2018, Justine Valdez, 24, after completing the residency permit application process, she went to the gym to work out, finishing at around 4:20 p.m. With plans to go home, her mother, Terrace, texted her to pick up some bread on the way. Justine agreed, stopping at the store before catching the 185 bus to Bray, which departed at 6:09 p.m. The bus dropped Justine off at a familiar stop near her rural home called Aina Car Village. It usually took her 15 to 20 minutes to walk home. Although it was not a difficult journey for someone as young and active as Justine, her family became worried when she did not arrive home on time. Justine often told her family where she was and when she would be home, so her mother, Terrace, grew increasingly worried as time passed without any news from her. When Terrace tried calling and texting Justine, she did not respond. This prompted Terrace to go out and look for her. While searching, she asked strangers if they had seen Justine, describing her features and the sporty outfit that made her stand out from the crowd. Although some people saw Justine getting off the bus, no one knew where she went after that. Terrace's search for her daughter ended in frustration and growing fear. She had no idea what had happened to Justine on her way home, and with each passing moment, her anxiety grew. Terrace searched the streets, looking for Justine, but still found nothing. Justine's disappearance left her mother devastated, unable to find any trace of her daughter. Terrace, desperate, contacted the police to report the situation. The police quickly took her statement and began searching for Justine. As the police searched the area, they investigated Justine's life and social connections. It was learned that she lived with her parents, Terrace and Daniel Valdez, in the quiet rural area of Nisar, Ireland. Originally from the Philippines, Justine's parents moved to Ireland in search of a better life in 2015. Despite their difficult start, her parents worked hard to support Justine's education and life. A diligent student, Justine studied accounting at university while working part-time to support herself and help her family financially. Her part-time jobs included waitressing in Bray and babysitting for local families. Her parents, who lived in the servants' quarters of a large estate, worked for a prominent family, her mother as a housekeeper and her father as a gardener. Justine was known to be responsible, hardworking, and devoted to her family. Furthermore, her limited social circle and lack of typical teenage rebellious behavior made the idea of her running away seem implausible. When police contacted people who knew Justine, no one had any information about her whereabouts. The possibility of her running away was quickly ruled out. She was extremely close to her parents and kept them updated on her daily activities. On the day she went missing, she exchanged 63 text messages with her mother. The last of which came at 6:24 p.m. when Justine got off the bus. Police trying to find Justine received a vital tip. This led them to a disturbing incident that occurred just minutes after Justine got off the bus. A female driver reported seeing a man aggressively pushing a dark-haired Asian woman, wearing tracksuit bottoms similar to Justine, into the boot of a black Nissan Qashqai. The woman and her 12-year-old son drove past the scene and immediately called the police. Shortly after, another driver witnessed a similar alarming scene. This time, the Asian woman, who appeared to be very frightened, was seen sitting in the back of the car, knocking on the window for help. The driver who witnessed the incident discussed it with his wife when he got home, and he immediately called the police at 7:20 p.m. to report a possible kidnapping. Another driver also contacted police about a Nissan driving erratically near the scene. Police quickly arrived at the location, which the woman had called them earlier. When they arrived, they found Justine's broken phone and a bag of bread left on the side of the road, raising serious concerns for her safety. After the kidnapper tried to stuff Justine into the trunk of the car but she resisted, he forced her into the back seat and drove off to an unknown location. The suspect's black Nissan was immediately placed on the wanted list, leading to a large-scale search effort involving patrol cars and helicopters. However, the nighttime search was hampered by darkness and made no progress. The search continued as the day wore on, with police looking at witness accounts to narrow down the area where the perpetrator might be. A 40-year-old man named Mark Hennessy was identified because he matched the description of the kidnapper. Police went to his home and discovered that his wife, Nicola, did not know where he was because he had gone out drinking after work the day before. This information only added to the suspicion surrounding Mark, prompting police to investigate his background further. Mark Hennessy was a well-respected member of the community, known as a devoted husband and father to 2 young daughters, the youngest of whom was born 8 months ago in September 2017. He lived in an affluent neighborhood surrounded by other young families. His work as an estimator on construction sites provided a steady income for his family, and he had no previous run-ins with the law. However, police knew that people could often hide their true intentions behind a facade of good taste. With this in mind, the police went to the bar that Mark frequented the night before to gather more information. The staff confirmed that Mark had been there, but they said that he did not stay long. He left after drinking a beer and watching some football, then Mark returned to the bar around midnight, his expression clearly agitated and anxious. After reviewing the security footage of the bar, the police confirmed what the staff had said. They observed Mark staying there for about 10 minutes before leaving at 5:40 p.m. Engrossed in a conversation on the phone, he quickly went to his car and drove away. Then he returned to the bar around 11 p.m. Mark returned to the bar and talked to someone he knew at the entrance for a while before leaving the bar. Police began investigating Mark's activities between 5:40 p.m. and 11 p.m. A key discovery was then made when police analyzed surveillance footage from Justine's bus route. The footage showed Mark's black Nissan following the bus, starting 30 minutes after Mark left the bar. This disturbing discovery raised further suspicions about Mark's involvement in Justine's disappearance. The search for Mark's car and the missing girl continued, and Mark became the prime suspect in Justine's abduction. Mark called his wife to say he was going away for a long time. When his family tried to convince him to turn himself in, he refused and quickly left. His parents reported to the police that they had seen Mark, and the police tried to find him. But Mark escaped. The police asked for the public's help by issuing a media appeal. They asked for anyone with knowledge of Justine, Mark, or his car to come forward. A woman who heard the appeal kept an eye out and spotted a car that looked like Mark's on the road. She followed it to Cherrywood Park and observed the driver closely, then quickly contacted the police. When the police arrived, they found a man covered in blood sitting behind the wheel of a car. Despite attempts to coax him out of the car, Mark was stubborn, brandishing a knife in a threatening manner. Faced with imminent danger, the police were forced to resort to force, resulting in Mark being shot in the shoulder. After removing him from the car, they found him conscious but still uncooperative. The police then searched the car but unfortunately did not find Justine. Mark remained silent despite being questioned several times. The medical team quickly treated him and took him to the hospital. Doctors tried to save his life, hoping that he would eventually reveal Justine's location. Unfortunately, it was discovered that the bullet had ricocheted and hit Mark in the head. Further investigation revealed a gruesome discovery: the blood on his face and body was his own, and he had several fresh stab wounds on his arms and neck. The police believe that Mark, fearing arrest, apparently used a knife from his car to attempt suicide rather than face the consequences. The police eventually caught the suspect, but instead of feeling relieved, everyone felt disappointed. They found the suspect in his car, but they still hadn't found the missing person they were looking for. A glimmer of hope came when police discovered a piece of paper at the scene. Although it was covered in blood, they could read the words "sorry" and "Pease Castle." These words suggested that this might be a clue to finding Justine. Despite this small hope, they persisted. A search was launched in a forest in South Dublin, based on a clue found near a castle. First, searchers found Justine's wallet, which contained her identification. Then, on May 21st, searchers discovered Justine's body. An autopsy revealed that she had been murdered on the night of her abduction, and that she had died from strangulation. Unfortunately, the autopsy also revealed that Justine had been sexually assaulted, adding to the brutality of her death. A toxicology report, which found trace amounts of banned substances in her system, left many questions unanswered. It is unclear how the substances entered her system or what their purpose was. However, further investigation revealed that Mark had recently consumed large amounts of these substances, adding to the mystery. It turned out that Mark was a regular user of drugs and excessive alcohol, which could have inadvertently introduced these substances into Justine's system. At the same time, Mark's family life was also beginning to fall apart due to his addiction, debt, and frequent arguments with his wife. Investigations into Mark's activities have revealed that he used the dating app Tinder to interact with multiple women and flirt with women at bars. The discovery of Mark's DNA on Justine's body further strengthened the police's suspicion that he was involved in Justine's kidnapping and murder. As the police investigated the case, they discovered that the murder was motivated by sexual desire, and Justine had unwittingly become Mark's target. He discovered Justine while he was following a bus, and took advantage of her getting off the bus, brazenly abducting her from the street without hesitation, even in the presence of multiple witnesses. An investigation into Justine and Mark's phones revealed no previous connection or communication between them. However, further analysis revealed that Mark was familiar with Justine's regular route, suggesting that her murder was premeditated. It seemed that Mark had been closely monitoring Justine's movements, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This discovery shows Mark's premeditated brutality and Justine's tragic fate. The day Justine was kidnapped, he deliberately waited at the bus stop, closely monitoring her every move, until he suddenly grabbed her. The people around were extremely shocked by this scene, as such violent crimes rarely happened in their peaceful neighborhood. Many people came to pay their condolences to Justine's family, comforting and supporting them in this time of great loss. At the funeral, heartfelt tributes were paid as white balloons floated into the sky. Some attendees wore pink t-shirts with Justine's image printed on them, a touching tribute to her memory. Justine's family decided to hold her funeral in the Philippines, her homeland, to find solace in a familiar place. Although they lived in another country for a while, they finally moved back to Ireland in 2021. By starting over in a new city and pursuing different careers, they hoped to escape the painful memories that still haunted their old home. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Alison Baden-Clay. Alison Baden-Clay was born on July 1, 1968 in a suburb of Brisbane. She grew up in a wealthy family and developed a love for ballet from an early age. After completing her schooling, she pursued further studies and proved herself to be an excellent student, fluent in 6 languages. In 1993, at the age of 25, Alison entered a local beauty pageant, where she impressed the audience with her ballet skills. She then began her professional career in the Human Resources Department at the Brisbane Flight Centre. Here, her career progressed rapidly after her talent was recognized by her boss. It was while working at the centre that she met her future husband, Gerard. Gerard Baden-Clay was born on September 9, 1970 in Bournemouth, United Kingdom. Gerard comes from a distinguished lineage, with his great-grandfather, Robert Baden-Powell, a prominent British military leader and founder of the Scouting movement. Gerard moved to Zambia with his family when he was 1 year old, as it was the homeland of his father, Nigel Clay. They remained in Zambia for 8 years before migrating to Australia. Gerard then completed his studies in Australia, graduating with a degree in accounting. He eventually joined the Brisbane Flight Centre, where he met Alison. Gerard met Alison at the Brisbane Flight Centre, marking the beginning of their romance. They married on August 23, 1997 and then went on a trip around the world, visiting several countries including South America and Switzerland, with a temporary stay in London. When they returned to Australia, Alison returned to work at the Flight Centre, eventually being promoted to a management position. In 2002, Alison became pregnant and gave birth to her first child, a daughter named Hannah. After Hannah was born, Alison decided to focus solely on raising her children and taking care of her family. Gerard made several career changes during this time and opened a luxury real estate company in Brisbane in 2004. With the help of his parents, he invested a lot of time and effort into the business. The Gerard family had a second daughter, Sarah, born in 2004, followed by their youngest child, Ella, born in 2006. The family lived in a rented house in Brookfield, a suburb of Brisbane. Meanwhile, Alison spent most of her time looking after the girls at home. Over time, Alison began to notice that Gerard was increasingly distant from her. This eventually led to a shocking confession that he no longer loved her. Gerard's behavior towards Alison changed dramatically. He constantly criticized her, complaining about the meals she cooked and the cleanliness of the house. He called her lazy and said she was no longer attractive to him. Alison chose to remain silent in the face of these hurtful comments. In her diary, she poured out her heart, expressing her enduring love for Gerard, their frequent arguments, her feelings of guilt and her determination to change to win his love back. Alison hid her family troubles behind a cheerful exterior, making her appear to be a warm, caring person, a devoted mother and a loving wife. However, her family life took a difficult turn in 2011. Gerard's business suffered after the Queensland floods, resulting in a significant debt of around $1 million Australian dollars. That same year, in October, Alison discovered that Gerard was secretly having an affair with Tony McHugh, a coworker. Gerard and Tony met in 2008 when Tony was a client, and Gerard hired her. At the time, Tony was having marital problems after 17 years of marriage, which eventually led to Tony's divorce. Tony knew Gerard was married, but Gerard said that the relationship with Alison was loveless and that he was only staying for their daughter. Gerard promised Tony a future together and that he would marry her. In October 2011, Alison discovered that Gerard was having an affair with Tony. Gerard immediately ended the relationship and severed ties with Tony by firing her from his real estate company and reconciled with Alison. Tony still harbored hopes for a future with Gerard. 4 months later, in April 2012, Tony and Gerard were talking on the phone while Tony was driving home. They discussed an upcoming real estate conference and Gerard casually mentioned that Tony would be meeting Alison there the next day. This revelation upset Tony, causing her to question the promises he had made to her and to call him dishonest. Gerard apologized to Tony, reaffirmed his love for her, and reiterated his commitment to ending his marriage to Alison within 3 months. The following morning, April 20th, at 7:14 a.m., Gerard contacted the police in a distressed state, reporting that Alison had gone missing after going for a walk around 10 p.m. the night before. When police arrived at Gerard's home, they noticed deep, curved scratches on his face, which he claimed he had sustained while shaving. Further examination revealed small red marks on his chest, which Gerard explained were from a moth bite he had encountered while changing an outdoor light. A search of the house revealed no signs of a disturbance. Everything was in order, and the bed was made. Despite his stress, Gerard appeared calm and began getting his daughters ready for school and daycare. Police interviewed Hannah, Sarah, and Ella, who reported falling asleep after their mother turned off the lights and had not seen her since. During questioning, the crying girls described their parents as a happy and generally harmonious couple. Police searched the area and spoke to neighbors, but no one witnessed anything unusual. The only initial clues found were a small bloodstain on Alison's car and a strand of her hair in the trunk. A large-scale search operation soon followed, with rescue teams and volunteers searching woods, wells, manholes, and dams near the Alison family home. To aid the search efforts, a mannequin was placed wearing an outfit similar to Alison's last known outfit to aid the search efforts. As time went on, the chances of finding Alison alive diminished. Her friends clung to hope, not wanting to think the worst. Gerard appeared visibly upset as he tearfully pleaded with his wife to return, in front of the media. Behind the scenes, however, he instructed his lover, Tony, to keep quiet and put their relationship on hold, promising to reunite in the future. 10 days after Alison went missing, a boater made a horrifying discovery on the banks of Colorado Creek, about 8 miles from the Alison family home, on April 30, 2012. The body was found in an advanced state of decomposition. The day after Alison's body was discovered, Gerard contacted his insurance company to inquire about filing an $800,000 life insurance claim on his wife. A medical examiner later formally identified the body as Alison Baden-Clay, 43, using dental records. Notably, Alison was still wearing the same clothes she had been wearing when she went missing. A post-mortem examination found that Alison's death was likely due to strangulation. Her death was therefore classified as a homicide, although determining the exact cause was difficult due to the advanced stage of decomposition of the body. On May 11, 2012, St. Paul's Cathedral in Brisbane held a funeral for Alison Baden-Clay, who had tragically passed away. Her husband, Gerard, was visibly overcome with emotion, crying throughout the service as he consoled his daughters and consoled Alison's parents. Hundreds of people attended the service. However, while Gerard was apparently mourning his wife's death, he was secretly communicating with his mistress, Toni, through public phone calls. He informed her of Allison's passing and urged her to keep their affair a secret from the police investigation. Meanwhile, the police began to question the story Gerard had given them. He claimed that Allison had gone for a walk around 10 p.m. and was gone when he woke up. However, conflicting evidence emerged. Police found that Gerard had charged his phone at 2 a.m. and was on his computer at 5 a.m., and forensic analysis showed that the marks on his cheeks were consistent with fingernail scratches. In addition, no blood was found on his razor. A biologist disputed Gerard's explanation of the caterpillar bites on his chest, stating that no caterpillars in the family's area could have caused such injuries. A separate expert examined Allison's hair and found 5 different types of leaves: eucalyptus, Chinese elm, myrtle, cat's claw vine, and herringbone fern. 2 of these, eucalyptus and Chinese elm, were found growing directly under the bridge where Allison's body was discovered. In addition, all 5 types of leaves and thorns were found in the Allison family's backyard. On June 13, 2012, a month after Allison's funeral, 41-year-old Gerard Badenclay was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. He maintained his innocence and claimed he would fight the charges and applied for bail, which was immediately denied due to concerns that he might flee. During the investigation, police spoke to Toni, who revealed their 4-year secret relationship to Gerard. It was also discovered that just days before Allison went missing, Gerard had sent Toni a letter promising to be with Toni on July 1st. Further complicating the case. The prosecution's theory was that Gerard had killed his wife, Allison, to collect life insurance money and pay off debts. They believed he also planned to move on with Toni McHugh. According to their theory, a fight broke out on the evening of April 19, 2012, while Gerard and Allison were watching TV after their daughters had gone to bed. During the argument, Allison allegedly scratched Gerard's cheek, leaving her fingernails to collect DNA evidence. Unfortunately, the DNA had degraded, making it impossible to determine its source. The prosecution claimed that Gerard strangled Allison, then dragged her body through the backyard, leaving her hair tangled with leaves. Gerard placed her body in the trunk of his car and drove to a nearby river, where he dumped her body under a bridge. The prosecution believed that Gerard thought the river would wash her body away, effectively covering up his crime. Gerard then allegedly returned home, charged his phone, cleaned the house, and reported Allison missing the next morning. After finding Allison's body, Gerard hired a criminal defense attorney and went to see him. During Gerard's 2014 murder trial for Allison, prosecutors were convinced that Gerard was guilty and argued that he had killed her. However, Gerard maintained that he had nothing to do with her death. He admitted that he and Allison had argued and suggested that she may have left the house late one night because she was depressed and may have taken her own life. However, Allison's family and friends rejected this idea. They were certain that Allison would never leave her daughters, as she loved them very much. Her friends had long spoken out against Gerard, describing him as arrogant, fake, and self-centered. They believed that Allison's deep love for him blinded her to these negative traits. During the trial, excerpts from Allison's diary were presented as evidence. The diary revealed how isolated she felt and how controlling Gerard was, especially after the birth of their first child. She described feeling trapped at home and detailed several instances of Gerard's controlling behavior. This included insulting her, monitoring her conversations with a baby monitor, controlling her finances, deleting relatives' contact details from her phone and blocking their calls. After Allison's death, Gerard's attempts to make an insurance claim were rejected, with the money being withheld until the trial was over. Another important testimony came from Melissa Romano, who had never met Gerard in person but had spoken to him on the phone in 2009 about a real estate deal. She testified that after the deal was finalized, Gerard called her out of the blue, suggesting, "I'm looking for someone to kill my wife." Melissa, stunned, questioned his motives, but Gerard abruptly redirected the conversation and ended the call. This testimony played a key role in the case against Gerard, which on July 15, 2014, Gerard Badenclay was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 15 years. In 2015, Gerard appealed his conviction, and the court reclassified the crime to involuntary manslaughter, shortening his prison term. However, the decision sparked widespread outrage, with around 4,000 people demonstrating in support of Allison's family. In response to public sentiment, in 2016, Australia's High Court overturned the Court of Appeal's decision, reinstating the original murder conviction. As a result, Gerard will not be eligible for parole until at least 2027. During his incarceration, Gerard initially behaved like a model prisoner. However, over time, he adapted to prison life and became less restrained in his behavior, leading to an incident where he clashed with a prison guard, which resulted in a stern reprimand. Following Gerard Badenclay's trial, his former lover, Toni McHugh, moved to Bali, where she spent her time teaching and doing charity work. 4 years later, she moved to the United Arab Emirates to continue her education career. Toni now lives a private life, keeping her personal information private. She occasionally connects with friends on social media using a private account, as she fears that Gerard may try to find her after his release. In a recent public statement, Toni expressed remorse for her actions and clarified that she never intended to cause Allison any harm. Allison's daughters Hannah, Sarah and Ella Badenclay are living with her parents. Allison's assets, including her insurance money, have been passed on to her children. After completing her university studies in 2022, Hannah has followed in her mother's footsteps by pursuing a career in dance. In memory of her sister Allison, Vanessa set up a charity to combat domestic violence and support those affected, while raising awareness of the issue. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Susan Reinert. Susan Reinert, affectionately known as Sue, was born in 1943 in the town of Ridgeway in northwestern Pennsylvania. Her father, William Gallagher, worked as a newspaper sales manager, while her mother, Jane Gallagher, was a dedicated teacher. From an early age, Susan showed a passion for learning and a strong love of literature, suggesting that she might follow in her mother's footsteps into the field of education. While studying at Grove City College, Susan met a young Air Force recruit named Kenneth Reinert. Although their meeting was simple, it had a profound impact on her life. Susan and Kenneth's relationship deepened as they both pursued higher education. After much effort and determination, Susan graduated from college with a bachelor's degree. She continued her education, earning a master's degree in English from Pennsylvania State University. In 1965, Susan and Kenneth began their new lives after graduating from Grove City College. Because Kenneth was in the military, they had to move around a lot. They started by moving to Sacramento, California, then returned to the Northeast and lived in Rome, New York. The family even lived in Puerto Rico for a while before settling permanently in the Philadelphia area in 1971. In 1974, Susan Reinhardt, a devoted teacher and loving mother, experienced a turning point when she and Kenneth decided to divorce. The divorce was amicable, without legal disputes. Susan then became an active single mother, focusing on building a home for her 2 children, Karen and Michael. With her warm and friendly personality, she was well liked by her colleagues and students at Chestnut Walled Elementary School. In addition to her teaching career, Susan was actively involved with Parents Without Partners, especially in the Valley Forge program. After her mother passed away, Susan found strength and support from this organization despite her grief. Despite many challenges, she persevered through her involvement with parents without partners. Susan's story took a mysterious turn. On June 22, 1979, Susan Reinhardt and her 2 children spent their day together. That morning, her son, Michael, had been with his father, Kenneth. That evening, they had attended a father-son baseball game. However, the game ended early when Susan picked Michael up at 8:30 p.m. That evening, Susan contacted her ex-husband's parents, Florence and John Reinhardt. Despite their divorce, she had maintained a good relationship with them. Susan checked the gas tank and found it was nearly full, enough for the trip to Allentown, Pennsylvania, a town about an hour's drive north. The purpose of the trip was to attend a single-parent conference and spend the weekend with her children. Susan had signed up to run a workshop there and keep the children involved in activities throughout the weekend. They planned to leave on Saturday morning and return home late Sunday. At around 9 p.m. on Friday night, Karen and Michael were playing outside, picking up hailstones left over from a summer storm. About 30 minutes later, neighbors heard Susan's orange-red Plymouth Horizon start. Minutes later, the car disappeared. Susan had left the house with her 2 children, possibly to visit her boyfriend before going to the conference. She was in a long-term relationship with William Bradfield, a fellow teacher. Although they tried to keep it a secret, the relationship was causing tension in Susan's marriage to Kenneth. There were even rumors that Susan and William might get married. On June 22, 1979, Susan and her children set off after visiting her boyfriend. They planned to travel to Allentown, about 49 miles north, to spend the night at a motel. However, they never arrived. Susan and her children disappeared without a trace, leaving those who knew and loved them distraught. On June 25, 1979, Susan's Plymouth hatchback was discovered in the parking lot of the Host Inn in Harrisburg, 87 miles from Allentown and 97 miles from her home. Tragically, Susan's lifeless body was found in the back of the car. The details of her agonizing death were gruesome. Her body was naked, beaten, and bound with chains, curled up in the wheel well of the car. Her hands were tied, and she had black eyes. She had been beaten with chains or tied so tightly that the chains left bruises on her back. More frighteningly, she had been injected with a fatal dose of morphine. The whereabouts of her 2 children, however, were unknown. They had seemingly disappeared without a trace. Police searched for hours. But no one had seen them, nor had any of Susan's friends or relatives seen them that weekend. So, the police began investigating further. They posted pictures of the Reinhardt family in newspapers for weeks, looking for any clues about the children. The investigation discovered that Susan had named William Bradfield, the man she thought she was going to marry, as the beneficiary of $730,000 in life insurance policies. This raised suspicions that her children might have been murdered so he could receive the money. However, William Bradfield had a solid alibi, as he was in Cape May, New Jersey, the weekend Susan was murdered and her children went missing. Several teachers were present and confirmed his whereabouts. The police then turned their attention to Upper Merion High School, where Susan worked, as the school was experiencing problems. Principal J. Smith was embroiled in a scandal. He had served as principal until he was fired the previous year after being arrested at a local shopping center. In his Ford Granada, police discovered loaded handguns, a balaclava, and burglary tools. More disturbingly, a syringe containing morphine was found in the trunk. Jay had been struggling before that. His wife, Stephanie Smith, was diagnosed with malignant cancer and died in August 1979, after several hospitalizations. During this time, Stephanie Smith began keeping a diary, documenting her husband's strange behavior, which became increasingly worse. Jay became involved in intimate groups and changed sexual partners. which Stephanie Smith did not approve of, and this seemed to lead to even more disturbing behavior. In September 1977, Stephanie Huntsberger, the adult daughter of the couple, moved in with her parents along with her husband, Edward Huntsberger. They settled into the Smiths' home in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, that fall. Stephanie Smith was battling cancer, which caused turmoil in the family and seemed to increase tensions among them. Edward and Stephanie Huntsberger, Jay's daughter and son-in-law, were struggling with heroin addiction and had difficulty finding and keeping jobs before deciding to move back in with their families. Moving in with their parents was a desperate attempt to escape drugs. In early 1978, Jay Smith's daughter and son-in-law, Stephanie Huntsberger and Edward, mysteriously disappeared. They had moved in with Jay Smith and his wife just a few months earlier. They was last seen in February 1978, when they visited Edward's parents in North Wales, Pennsylvania. When they left, they promised to return soon, but then they disappeared. Their disappearance was first noticed when Edward failed to show up for a meeting with his probation officer later that month. Authorities contacted Jay Smith, the last person known to have had contact with the couple. Jay Smith told people that Edward and Stephanie Huntsberger had run away to California. He said they owed money to some drug dealers in the area and had fled to the West Coast. However, he was unable to provide any further information about the incident. Edward and Stephanie Huntsberger lived a nomadic life, so their disappearance went unnoticed for some time. Meanwhile, Jay was arrested for burglary. When police searched Jay's home, they found several suspicious items, including weapons, drugs, security uniforms, badges, and pornography. They also discovered nitric acid and office supplies stolen from a nearby school. Jay was suspected of being involved in recent armed robberies. During the burglary trial, Jay's friend William testified that they were on vacation when the robberies occurred. However, the jury did not believe this testimony. Jay had a bad reputation in Upper Merion and was known as the Prince of Darkness. Jay Smith was eventually sentenced to 2 to 5 years in prison on June 25, 1979, for a series of store robberies that took place in the late 1970s. During the investigation, Jay was arrested for burglary. Although Jay was in custody, the police still considered him a prime suspect in Susan's murder and continued to investigate his past. They made a remarkable discovery. Jay's daughter and son-in-law had also disappeared under similar circumstances as Susan and her 2 children. This led the police to suspect that there might be a connection between the 2 disappearances, Susan's death and the disappearance of her children. First, Susan had been killed by a morphine overdose, and a large amount of morphine had been discovered in Jay's home several months earlier. Second, a plastic comb with Jay's identification had been found in Susan's car. The disappearance of his daughter and son-in-law closely resembled the disappearance of Susan's children. The events that unfolded in this case were shocking and left a lasting impact on the public. However, the most shocking truth was yet to be revealed. In late July 1979, about a month after Susan's body was found near Harrisburg, investigators discovered a potential motive for the horrific murder that was financial gain. On July 20, 1979, a Philadelphia attorney filed a motion to stay the execution of Susan's will in both Montgomery County and Delaware. The motion was filed on behalf of Kenneth Reinert, Susan's ex-husband, and Patrick Gallagher, her brother. The purpose of this legal action was to give both men an opportunity to review the contents of Susan's will before it was executed. They decided to file in both counties because Susan's residence in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, was near the county line, allowing her to file her will in both places. It was later discovered that just a few weeks before her death, Susan had made several significant changes to her will. She had also purchased several large life insurance policies, naming her current boyfriend, William, as the beneficiary. In the legal documents, she referred to him as her future husband. As the police investigated further, they determined that Susan's death occurred between midnight on Saturday, June 23, 1979, and midnight on Sunday, June 24, 1979. William and other teachers arrived in Cape Cod at 5 a.m. on Saturday and remained there until the afternoon of Monday, June 25. However, it was unclear exactly where William was during the time of Susan's disappearance, casting doubt on his alibi. The investigation also revealed that Susan had withdrawn large sums of money from her account, totaling approximately $25,000, through multiple transactions due to daily limits. She told the bank staff that she intended to invest the money in high-yield investments managed by William, whom she referred to as her future husband. What Susan did not expect was that she was just one of many women in William's life. He was secretly dating several other people, including a coworker who taught English, with whom he had maintained a secret relationship for nearly 10 years. William had promised Susan that the investments would yield large returns to finance their upcoming wedding and move to England. During the investigation, investigators found fake stocks and bonds in Susan's home, which initially puzzled them. They later discovered that William had sold these fake securities to Susan and then passed them on to her. These securities were mostly related to fictitious and worthless companies, suggesting that William had been deceiving Susan for a long time. This discovery added a new dimension to the case, further clarifying William's financial motives. In March 1980, William was called to testify in a civil lawsuit. During his first appearance, he refused to answer questions directly and referred questions to his legal counsel. Although William's attorneys denied that he had taken Susan's money, they were willing to negotiate with the state to settle the matter and handle Susan's $1 million will. By June 1980, William had officially testified in court for the first time. He denied most of the allegations related to the case, insisting that his relationship with Susan was not as serious as she had told her relatives. He also denied any plans to marry Susan later that year, contrary to what Susan had shared with her close friends. William made unsubstantiated allegations about Susan's relationship with J. Smith, the former principal of Upper Marion High School, although there was no evidence to support these claims. On the contrary, many of Susan's relatives and friends confirmed her long-term relationship with William. It should be noted that J. Smith was in prison during the trial. William did not explain why Susan chose him as the heir to her $1 million-plus estate. Instead, he described Susan as unreliable and troubled. William also blamed Susan for her problems and claimed that he was only helping to solve her problems, especially in the civil lawsuit over the missing $25,000. In June 1980, Susan's brother and ex-husband filed a separate lawsuit. They wanted to recover the entire $450,000 insurance policy that Susan had received a few weeks before her death. The intention was to put the money in a trust fund to conduct their own investigation. The case was complicated and full of unexpected events. On February 20, 1981, William was arrested by the police on 3 charges, 2 counts of theft and 1 count of conspiracy. He was accused of keeping $25,000 that Susan had given him to invest. William was released on bail on February 23, 1981, but his criminal trial was scheduled to begin the following month. Before the criminal trial began, the civil case was closed. It was decided that $36,000 from Susan's estate would be used to further investigate the children's clothing and settle a dispute over the remainder of her will. This prevented William from receiving any money on August 3, 1981. William's criminal trial lasted 5 days and ended with a guilty verdict on the theft charge. Delaware County District Attorney Edward Weiss then asked that William's bail be increased from $25,000 to $75,000. The reason was that they believed this sentence increased the risk of William fleeing, especially since there was a possibility that he would be charged with murder. Judge Robert A. Wright granted this request. On April 6, 1983, William was arrested by the Pennsylvania State Police on several felony charges, including 3 counts of murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, conspiracy to kidnap, and obstruction of justice. The jury concluded that William knew about the plan to kill Susan and her children and was involved in the crimes. Although J. Smith was believed to be involved, he was not charged at the time. Part of the indictment was based on the testimony of Proctor Noel, a fellow inmate, who stated that during a game of chess, William confessed to his involvement in the murders. The arrest of William Bradfield in April 1983 was a major step in the investigation of the case. Although there was no physical evidence linking William to Susan Reinert's death or the disappearance of her children, prosecutors were confident in the case. William's previous burglary convictions and his connection to the suspected body dumping led to more serious charges in the 1980s. J. Smith, who was serving time for other crimes, was forced to testify before a grand jury despite invoking his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. William Bradfield was also called to testify in 1984, but details of his testimony have not been released. The hearing was reportedly related to the disappearances of Stephanie Hunsberger and Edward Hunsberger, Jay's daughter and son-in-law. In April 1985, Jay was asked to provide handwriting samples to compare with old documents that might be related to the plan to kill Susan Reinert. This investigation led to Jay's arrest on June 25, 1985, exactly 6 years after Susan Reinert's body was found. Jay was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and held in custody while awaiting trial. In 1984, Joseph Wambaugh, a well-known crime author, published a book about the case. The book supported the theory that Jay was the killer. A television movie based on the book was later produced, bringing the case to national attention. Jay maintained his innocence throughout his imprisonment. He appealed and accused William Bradfield of framing him. In 1989, the court reviewed the case and found problems with the indictment, leading to a new trial in 1990. Jay waived his right to a speedy trial to allow for a more thorough investigation. In 1992, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled in Jay's favor, overturning the murder conviction and finding the prosecution guilty. For the next 2 decades, the state did not retry the case, allowing Jay to live out his life in freedom. William Bradfield continued to evade liability and refused to pay the $25,000 owed to Susan Reinert's estate. The case dragged on until 1996. Jay sued the state and Joseph Wambaugh for defamation and conspiracy, but both lawsuits were dismissed. On January 16, 1998, William Bradfield, after more than 10 years in prison, was found unconscious in his cell and died of cardiac arrest. Susan's ex-husband, Kenneth Reinert, died in June 2002 without knowing the fate of his 2 missing children. J. Smith, who was exonerated in 1992, wrote a book about his case and remarried in 2002. He died on May 12, 2009. However, the 1978 disappearance of his daughter and son-in-law, Stephanie Hunsberger and Edward Hunsberger, remains unsolved to this day. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Brayla Stone. Brayla Stone, a 17-year-old girl born and raised in North Little Rock, Arkansas, stands out for her fun-loving and outgoing personality. She lives in the suburb of Sherwood. Brayla is very active on social media, especially Instagram, where she attracts many followers thanks to her unique sense of humor. Despite being transgender and sometimes facing negative reactions from some people in the community, Brayla is always proud of who she is. She is not afraid to stand up for herself and oppose negative words or actions directed at her or her lifestyle. Brayla lives confidently and strongly, not letting anything stand in her way. Brayla naturally expresses her femininity in her daily life and on social media. This is shown not only through her style of dress and makeup but also through her behavior and communication with people. She realizes that true confidence comes from accepting and loving yourself, not from trying to meet other people's expectations. Despite life's challenges, Brayla persists in pursuing her dreams and holding on to her beliefs. She hopes to one day stand in a spotlight, proudly showing her true self to the world. Brayla is a strong and admirable girl. We use the pronoun she when talking about Brayla to show respect and acknowledge her gender identity. In 2020, Brayla began a relationship with Trevone Hayes Miller, an 18-year-old who worked at a local Arby's. However, Trevone has a troubled past. Trevone was involved in a murder when he was 14 and was part of a criminal gang. In April 2016, Trevone and two older teens plotted to rob Brian Thompson, a 17-year-old marijuana dealer. They lured Brian to the parking lot of a local recreation center, promising to buy his merchandise. Trevone was carrying a BB gun, while one of his friends was carrying a real gun. While Brian was making the transaction, the older teen suddenly shot Brian in the neck and stole $15. The group then fled. Brian's death highlights the brutality and guilt of Trevone and his gang's actions. It is clear that Trevone was a dangerous criminal. This raises the question of why Brayla would choose to date someone like that. It is possible that Brayla did not know about Trevone's criminal past, or that there were other factors in their relationship that we do not know about. Everyone has their own preferences and choices, and sometimes relationships do not follow conventional standards. However, not all young women are attracted to men with complicated pasts. Each woman has her own criteria when choosing a partner. Some may be attracted by empathy or hope that the other person will change for the better, while others may seek stability and security in the relationship. Police found about a pound of marijuana in the car and arrested all three suspects within a day of the shooting. Security cameras near the scene captured their images, leading to their quick arrest. Trevone, the youngest of the group, was initially charged with murder. However, he agreed to cooperate with the investigation and was prepared to testify against his co-defendants. This resulted in his charges being reduced to armed robbery in juvenile court. Although Trevone did not have to testify because his co-defendants pleaded guilty, he was prepared to disclose text messages in court. These messages showed that Trevone was the mastermind behind the robbery plan, despite being the youngest of the group. Trevone initially planned to commit the robbery at an abandoned house they had been using as a hideout. As a result, Trevone only served a short time in juvenile detention. Two older accomplices were convicted and remain in custody. In 2019, Trevone was arrested again for robbery and impersonation. He posed as a security guard at a Walmart and attempted to rob two customers in the parking lot. A few months later, he was arrested again on weapons charges. In 2020, Trevone and Brayla had a romantic and sexual relationship for a while. Brayla was a confident transgender person but still faced social stigma. She understood that not everyone accepted her. When she began her relationship with Trevone, Brayla agreed to keep it a secret. Although Trevone knew Brayla was transgender, he still felt uncomfortable making the relationship public. He feared the negative reaction from society and the possible consequences. Instead of public his relationship with Brayla, Trevone kept the relationship a secret. Their conflict escalated when Brayla discovered that Trevone was having an affair with another woman. Feeling betrayed, Brayla threatened to expose their relationship. Trevone responded by inviting Brayla to his home and offering to pay her to keep quiet. Trevone's fear causes him to have negative thoughts. Instead of facing society and taking responsibility, he wants to eliminate Brayla to keep the secret. Trevone tells her about his intentions through a phone call. However, she does not take the threat seriously, believing that Trevone only says it when he is agitated. She tries to calm him down and hopes that things will work out on their own. After the phone call, Brayla went to Trevone's home. A friend confirmed this while talking to Brayla on the phone as she was waiting for Trevone to open the door. About 5 hours after meeting Trevone, Brayla texted the friend, saying she was unhappy and they had been arguing for hours. Sadly, this was one of the last times anyone heard from Brayla. The next morning, a passerby called the police to report a body in a park in the Sherwood area of North Little Rock. Police found Brayla's body in a black Saturn Vue on a gravel road near 7224 Vista Point Court, which overlooks Gap Creek Drive. North Little Rock police had reported Brayla missing shortly before the discovery. When police arrived on the scene, they found the body of Brayla, a 17-year-old girl, in an abandoned car on a gravel road. She had been shot to death, with a gunshot wound to the head. Brayla's body was found lying face up on the floor in front of the passenger seat, with her legs extended behind the seat. The driver's side window was broken. The police report noted that there was blood inside the car and a strong smell of bleach. Investigators also found some of the interior upholstery discolored, possibly from exposure to bleach. News of Brayla's death has been widely reported in the media. Notably, her family requested that articles about Brayla use the pronoun he and her birth name, contrary to her expressed preferences prior to her death. It was clear that there was a clear disagreement between Brayla and her family about her identity. This was demonstrated by their lack of respect for her gender identity, even after her death. In the obituary, the family used an old image of Brayla before her transition, which caused a sense of disappointment and regret. Instead of celebrating Brayla for who she was, the family chose to present a past image that she had tried to change. This reflects the difficulties in society in accepting and respecting diversity in gender identity. After Brayla passed away, an Instagram account named Tap and Season commented that they killed her for $5,000 and posted pictures of money as evidence. In the next 24 hours, this account received a lot of criticism. Finally, the account owner admitted that he was just a 15-year-old kid making up stories to get attention. This thoughtless action is not only irresponsible but also deserves strong condemnation. The baseless confession of murder has caused more grief for Brayla's family and friends and affected the whole community. Anxiety and insecurity in the community are increasing as people read the comments and wonder if there is a real killer on the loose in Sherwood. The fact that the police have not arrested the imposter has only made the situation more tense. While this child may not face legal consequences, his actions have had serious repercussions. Hopefully, as he grows up, he will realize his mistakes and learn a valuable lesson about the importance of honesty and respect for others. After a week of investigation, the police arrested Trevone. According to reports, Trevone quickly became the prime suspect in the case. A friend of Brayla provided important information to the police. Brayla was with Trevone on the night of her murder, and the location where Brayla's body was found was a place Trevone frequently went to have sex, due to its proximity to his residence in Sherwood. After Brayla's death, Trevone's manager at Arby's contacted him. During the conversation, Trevone appeared very upset and said that he had screwed everything up and would not be returning to work for a long time. Although the manager tried to ask Trevone what had happened, he only replied that she would know soon. Upon hearing that Brayla's body had been discovered, the manager immediately reported the conversation to the police. With this information and other evidence, Trevone was finally arrested on August 3rd. At trial, prosecutors alleged that Trevone had murdered Brayla to prevent her from revealing their sexual relationship. According to the indictment, Brayla had discovered that Trevone was dating another woman and planned to retaliate by making their previous intimate relationship public. Fearing that he would be labeled a homosexual, Trevone allegedly paid Brayla to keep the matter quiet. However, when he learned that Brayla was still planning to reveal the information, Trevone killed her. At the time of the murder, Trevone, who was 19 years old, was charged with murder. He called his manager at Arby's to express his remorse for his actions. "I'm in big trouble and I could be dead," Trevone said. "I screwed up and I won't be able to come back for a long time." Trevone initially faced a murder charge that could have carried a life sentence or the death penalty. However, he agreed to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence through a deal with prosecutors. The investigation found similarities between Brayla's murder and that of 17-year-old Brian Allen Thompson. Brian was murdered in April 2016 in the parking lot of the Bill Harmon Recreation Center in Sherwood. A center employee discovered Brian dead behind the wheel, having been shot in the neck. Trevone is one of 3 teens charged with his murder. Sherwood Detective Craig Grisham noted that in both cases, the killer fired from the passenger seat, making it difficult for the victim in the driver's seat to escape. Craig also mentioned in his arrest affidavit that both murders occurred at locations Trevone was familiar with, close to his home and convenient for him to escape undetected. While Trevone did not kill Brian, he witnessed the crime from the back seat of the victim's car, according to his testimony to investigators. A Pulaski County court has convicted Trevone Hayes Miller, 20, of the murder of Brayla Stone. Brayla, 17, was shot and killed in the Sherwood neighborhood of North Little Rock on June 25, just days before her 18th birthday. Trevone was sentenced to a total of 50 years in prison, 40 years for first-degree murder and 10 years for unlawful use of a weapon. He has been in custody since his arrest. About a week after the murder, Trevone must serve at least 35 years before he can apply for parole, which means he will be 53 when he becomes eligible for early release. The plea agreement, negotiated by attorney Burke Moore and Deputy U.S. Attorney John Johnson, reduced Trevone's charge to 1 count of murder. Brayla was one of 44 transgender people in the United States murdered in 2020, the highest number ever recorded, though the actual number is likely higher, as 34 additional deaths have been reported since. Many other victims may not have been recorded due to misidentification of name or gender, or because their deaths were not fully reported. Ashley Marie Preston, a journalist and transgender activist, has spoken out about Brayla's murder and called for action. She also objected to the media using Brayla's birth name instead of her real name, despite Brayla's family requesting to use her pre-transition name and pronouns. Local groups was hold a candlelight vigil tonight at Bull Park in Little Rock to protest the incident. A Change.org petition has received more than 100,000 signatures to date. The Center for the Revolution in the Arts, a youth organization in Little Rock, describes Brayla as someone who always made space for others to be themselves. They invite mourners to wear red and purple, Brayla's favorite colors. On Facebook, the organization emphasizes the importance of honoring Brayla's memory and seeking justice for her. Brayla was not just an individual, but a shining example of dignity and courage. She faced many hardships and pressures that others can hardly understand. However, Brayla always maintained her faith and desire to live a free and happy life. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Alicia Canales McGuire. Alicia Canales McGuire was born on October 29, 1992, in Mount Vernon, Washington, to Manuel and Michelle Canales. Growing up on a farm, she learned the value of hard work and often returned to her family's farm to help. Spending time with loved ones is essential to Alicia. She talks to them often. Alicia lives in Birdsview with her husband Bradley, whom she married in a beach ceremony at Deception Pass in July 2017. She had just gotten married 2 months ago, and Alicia is excited about having her own family. Her sister, Amanda Canales, who has 3 children, is about to go on a business trip to New York and asks Alicia to babysit while she is away. Alicia happily agrees because she loves her nieces and nephews. Alicia has been taking care of her grandchildren with an in-house nanny. When the nanny heard the gunshots, she rushed to check. She found Alicia dead at the door. The nanny immediately called 911, asking for help. When the police arrived, they began searching the house to make sure the perpetrator was no longer inside. The police verified that only the nanny and Amanda's children were present. After the children were safely removed from the house, the police began collecting evidence. A car was parked in front of the house near where Alicia was shot, with shell casings nearby, indicating that the shooter had been next to the car, near the front door. Several bullets were lodged in the door frame, and Alicia's body was lying face down outside the door. The crime did not appear to be a robbery, as the house was undisturbed and there were no signs of forced entry. This led the police to wonder who might have wanted to kill Alicia and why. However, police attention was diverted when they learned that the house belonged to Alicia's sister, Amanda. They began to consider the possibility of mistaken identity, suspecting that Amanda might have been the intended target. But Amanda was in New York at the time of the shooting. The nanny, who was in the house when the shooting occurred, was questioned by police. They asked her if she had seen the shooter or knew anyone who might have wanted to harm Alicia. The nanny reported that she was upstairs when she heard the gunshots. When she ran downstairs, she found Alicia lying face down and unconscious on the floor. Unfortunately, the nanny did not see the shooter. Alicia's acquaintances told the police that Alicia seemed to get along well with her husband, Bradley. However, she gave the police a crucial clue when she mentioned that Alicia's sister, Amanda, was having problems with her ex-husband, Kevin Lewis. After reviewing reports from the local sheriff's office, the police discovered that they had been called to Amanda and Kevin's address several times before, all in connection with domestic disputes. The police found this information particularly interesting and decided to investigate further. Before dawn, they visited Kevin at his home in another part of Everett. When they knocked on the door, Kevin opened the door, looking as if he had just woken up. During the conversation, the officers asked Kevin if he knew where Amanda was, and he replied that she should be home. The police questioned Kevin about his whereabouts the night before. He claimed to have gone home, saying that his sister and mother would confirm his alibi. He did not ask why the police were there. When they told him that there had been a shooting in the house where his children lived, he showed no emotion, which was unusual for a father. He should have asked if his children were okay, but he did not. When the police told him that Amanda was away on business, Kevin appeared genuinely surprised, exclaiming, "Really?" and ending the conversation. As they left, the police discovered surveillance cameras at 2 nearby homes that could help corroborate Kevin's story. After reviewing the footage, the police discovered a car parked near Kevin's driveway about 40 minutes before the attack on Alicia. The footage showed someone resembling Kevin walking out the front door, getting into the car, and driving away, contradicting Kevin's claim that he had been home all night. The recording was not clear enough to confirm the identity of the person as Kevin. To gather more information, the police reviewed footage from another camera, which gave them a closer look at the car, but did not help identify it. All they could see was that it was a light-colored car. They fast-forwarded the footage and saw the car return about 20 minutes later. However, they now noticed a crucial detail: the right front tire of this car was different from the other 3. The 3 tires were light-colored, while the right front tire was dark. The car stopped near Kevin's house, and the same person seen in the first footage got out of the car and walked back to the house. Whoever this man was, he had entered the house about 20 minutes before the 911 call about a shooting started coming in. The car then drove away and never returned. It was a 15-minute drive from Kevin's house to Amanda's, meaning the car had enough time to get to Amanda's house, or it may not have been involved in the shooting. Amanda first learned of younger sister Alicia's death when her father called her, just hours after the tragedy. Amanda was in New York at the time, away from her family. Alicia's death was especially devastating, as she had recently married and was looking forward to starting a family of her own. When police questioned Amanda about potential suspects, she immediately pointed to her ex-husband Kevin as the likely culprit. During their 8 years together, Amanda endured physical abuse, leaving her bruised. Even after their divorce in June 2017, Kevin's behavior did not change. He continued to threaten Amanda, causing her to fear for her safety. Following a court ruling in August 2017, Amanda was awarded full custody of their 3 young children. The court ordered Kevin to pay $800 a month. This marked a new beginning for Amanda, as she rebuilt her life in Everett, Washington. Surrounded by the love and support of her family, Amanda overcame the challenges of being a single mother. Kevin threatened Amanda, saying he would kill her. As a former soldier, he had been trained. Amanda believed she was the target of the attack, but younger sister died. She even obtained a restraining order against Kevin, but he violated the order several times. Kevin frequently loitered outside her home, peering through windows and instilling fear in Amanda and her 3 children. Although he ignored the restraining order, he was never charged by the police. In one particularly disturbing incident just weeks before her sister was murdered, Amanda was brutally beaten as she got out of her car. She was returning home late at night and had parked in the driveway next to her house. She didn't see the attacker's face because the attack happened so suddenly, but she was certain Kevin was the culprit. Kevin Lewis, 30, was initially the prime suspect in the death of Alicia Canales-McGuire. Police believed he was targeting his ex-wife. However, Kevin did not know Amanda was in New York, nor did he know Alicia was babysitting Amanda's children while she was away. Police found discrepancies. If the person in the video was indeed Kevin, he would have been home during the entire time of the shooting. Furthermore, his sister and mother had provided Kevin with a solid alibi. Therefore, the police continued to investigate and look into what happened. Upon returning to Amanda's home, the police re-examined the crime scene. Ballistics experts determined that Alicia was shot with the door partially open. The shooter fired at least 7 shots from outside the house, then fired inside. Evidence at the crime scene showed that the shooter fired multiple shots while standing next to the garage, then moved toward the door and fired again from inside. Alicia's autopsy revealed that she died from multiple gunshot wounds to the head and torso, with a total of 5 shots hitting her. 2 of the shots caused gunpowder wounds, suggesting they were fired at close range. Although the medical examiner was unable to determine the exact order of the shots, it is believed that the 2 head wounds may have been the final shots. Forensic analysis confirmed that all 7 shell casings found at the scene came from the same type of gun. The wounds to Alicia's head were consistent with shots fired at close range. The shell casings found at the crime scene also caught the attention of police because the type of shell casing was uncommon. It was a Russian-made shell casing under the brand name Telamo. Since this was not a common brand, police hoped to identify the seller or buyer of the bullets. After investigating, they discovered that a Walmart store near the crime scene had sold the bullets. A Walmart representative informed police that a man had purchased the bullets and that they had surveillance footage of the transaction. After reviewing the footage, which was recorded on September 18, 2 days before Alicia died, police thought the buyer might be Kevin. However, they were wrong, as the man in the footage was not Kevin. The buyer paid with a credit card, allowing police to obtain his name. After investigating this new lead, police found no connection between the man and Kevin, Alicia, Amanda, or the nanny. Therefore, police needed to find new evidence to move the case forward. Amanda says that at first their relationship was good, but eventually he became violent and started hitting her. The relationship ended in a messy divorce, with a restraining order and full custody of the children awarded to Amanda. Amanda was devastated to learn that it was not Alicia who died in the shooting. Believing it was a case of mistaken identity, she believed the bullets were meant for her and told the police that Kevin was the attacker. However, according to surveillance cameras, Kevin was home at the time of the shooting. During the investigation, the police reviewed the footage taken the night of Alicia's death again. Now they noticed something they had not noticed before. This low-quality recording showed Kevin leaving the house, walking to the car and getting into the back seat behind the driver. But why wasn't he in the front passenger seat? In search of an answer, the police concluded that someone else was in the front passenger seat. So, when the car pulled up in front of Kevin's house, there were probably two people in the car. Police had no evidence that Kevin was involved in Alicia's death, but they collected evidence of Kevin's attacks on his ex-wife Amanda and arrested him in November 2018. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and Alicia's case remains unsolved after more than a year. A breakthrough in her case came in 2019 when a woman contacted the police station with crucial information. The woman reported that she had attended a party near Spokane, where she met a girl who claimed to be involved in a murder. This girl, Angelica, bragged about being hired to commit a crime on York Road, the same location where Alicia was shot and killed. Even though Spokane is a 5-hour drive from Everett, police decided to follow up on the lead. According to the woman, Angelica mentioned that she and her boyfriend were involved in the case, saying that the victim died from a gunshot wound to the head, fired from a corner. They were hired by the children's father. Furthermore, Angelica said that they had taken the life of the wrong person. It was a case of mistaken identity. The police have never released details about this case. Only the police and family members know that Alicia was shot in the head. Considering that Angelica knew many details about the crime, the police were interested in this information. During the search for Angelica, the police discovered that her real name was Alexis Hale. On her social media profile, they found photos of her holding a 9mm pistol, which could be the murder weapon. In addition, some videos show a man in the background, identified as her boyfriend, Jaden Phelps. A video posted by Alexis on the night of Alicia's death shows her filming through the windshield of a car, analyzing traffic signs. Police were able to pinpoint the exact location of the car, about a 10-minute drive from Kevin's house. A few days after Alicia's death, police discovered a video of Jaden bragging about a large sum of money. Further investigation led them to a social media post by Jaden, where they found 5 comments, one of which was from his aunt. When they looked at her profile, they realized she was also Kevin's mother. It turned out Jaden was Kevin's cousin. Police now had enough evidence to make an arrest. The first person to be handcuffed was Alexis Hale. She screamed and said the police couldn't arrest her because she was only 17. She knew why she was being arrested and asked for a lawyer. Around the same time, police arrested Jaden in another part of town. To build their case, police analyzed phone records from both Jaden and Alexis, revealing a trip from Spokane to Everett that coincided with the shooting. Alexis did not tell police anything. Kevin is in prison, serving a 3-year sentence for assaulting Amanda. Therefore, police hope to get some information from Jaden. Police obtained a confession and the name of the person who hired Alexis and Jaden. It was Kevin Lewis. To gather more information, the police took Jaden to the crime scene and asked him to describe what happened. Jaden began explaining how Kevin brought him there and showed him where the house was, and then Jaden took Kevin home. Jaden was then asked by the police to describe what happened when his girlfriend Alexis knocked on the door. Jaden explained that the door was ajar and Alicia stuck her head out and saw Alexis walking out the door. As Alexis was walking away, Jaden rounded the corner and started shooting. Alicia closed the door, but Jaden opened it again and continued shooting. He fired 2 more shots before Alicia was able to close the door. Jaden then said that he ran from the crime scene. Kevin Lewis was arrested on charges of aggravated murder with a firearm, conspiracy to commit murder and solicitation of murder in connection with the death of Alicia Canales-McGuire in 2017, while he was serving time for assaulting his ex-wife Amanda. The 2 people involved in the case are Jaden Phelps and Alexis Hale. Jaden, then 20, pleaded guilty to first-degree intentional homicide in July 2020 and was sentenced to 31 years in prison. Alexis, then 18, also pleaded guilty and received the 15-year sentence. During his trial, Jaden testified that he committed the crime for money and street cred. Jaden used the money Kevin paid him to get tattoos and buy a pair of Timberland boots and a Ferragamo belt. He claimed Alexis took the handgun from a family member and he split $200 with her. Kevin pleaded not guilty and went to trial later that year. The prosecution claimed that Kevin paid Jaden and Alexis $2,400 to harm his ex-wife Amanda, but that they were mistaken identities and caused Alicia's tragic death. Jaden and Alexis claimed that Kevin gave them the address. And Jaden claimed that he did not know who the target was, only the address. Jaden received the payment after dropping Kevin off at his home. Jaden and his girlfriend Alexis then returned to the location Kevin had indicated. They got out of the car and approached the house, with Jaden stopping near the garage and Alexis knocking on the front door. When Alicia answered, Alexis left and Jaden continued to fire until he ran out of ammunition. Jaden initially fired from his position near the garage and then went up to the front porch to fire the remaining shots. He pointed the gun at the house, aiming at Alicia's neck and head area. They then drove away but quickly returned, concerned that they might have left a glove at the scene. However, when they saw a police car, they turned around and left the area, using GPS directions to drive back to Spokane. The defense argued that Kevin never actually used the word kill when speaking to Jaden and said that Kevin only said to get the target off the road. However, the prosecution countered that Kevin had a history of violence and had threatened Amanda. In November 2021, Kevin Lewis was convicted of first-degree murder after a 6-week trial, with the jury reaching a verdict in less than 3.5 hours. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole in January 2022. As part of his sentence, Kevin was also banned from contacting his ex-wife and children for the rest of his life. He is currently serving his sentence at the Washington State Prison in Walla Walla County. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Brittany Gregory. Brittany Gregory was born on April 1, 1988 in Brick Township and is the youngest of 5 children. Due to her parents' divorce, she had to live with her father but still maintained a close relationship with all of her siblings, especially her older sister Brianna, who is 4 years older than her. Brittany was a model student in school and her teachers believed that she had the potential to become a scholar. However, her passion and dreams were focused on something completely different. She had an ambition to become a forensic scientist and study evidence at crime scenes. At home, Brittany enjoyed her role as the youngest child in the family. According to her mother, Brittany was spoiled, but she was not vain or arrogant. Brittany was a fan of pop culture and her idol was none other than the queen of pop Britney Spears. Her bedroom was decorated with posters of Britney Spears. Aside from music, Brittany enjoys watching cartoons, especially SpongeBob SquarePants. And she can't stop watching TV shows about forensic science, a career she aspires to pursue. Brittany's love for forensic science often brings her closer to her mother. They share a passion for watching TV shows about the subject and often call each other to discuss episodes as they watch them. Brittany, 16, and her 20-year-old sister Brianna live with their father, Joe Dunn, and his girlfriend, Lori Peterson, in a small house near their school. Their house is down the street and near a wooded area. At the time, Brittany was in a 2-year relationship with her 18-year-old boyfriend, John Fitzgerald, a nice guy whose family approved of the relationship, and they were considered the perfect couple. On Sunday, July 11, 2004, Brittany's mother, Deborah, and her sister, Brianna, were visiting her brother and his wife, who had a newborn daughter, in the town of South Toms River, 15 miles from their home. That evening, Brittany called her mother on her cell phone at approximately 8:30 p.m. to ask for a ride to John's house. However, Brittany seemed upset. Her mother explained that she was out of town and couldn't drive Brittany, but said that her sister Brianna could be there in about an hour. Brittany agreed to wait for her sister. Approximately 45 minutes after Brittany called, Brianna was free and attempted to call her back. However, her call went unanswered, leading Brianna to assume that Brittany was either asleep or had gone to John's house with someone else. The next morning, when Brianna returned home, she found Brittany was gone, but all of her belongings, including her phone, were still in the house. This seemed unusual, as Brittany rarely left her phone behind and often informed her family of her plans. Brianna contacted Brittany's friends, but none of them knew of her sister's whereabouts. After failing to reach Brittany, Brianna decided to call John. According to John, he last spoke to Brittany on the phone on Sunday morning and they had not seen or spoken to each other since. Lori Peterson, a family friend who lived with them, said she returned home around 10 p.m. Sunday and did not find Brittany there. Brianna reported her sister missing to the police, sensing that something was wrong. Initially, the police did not believe that Brittany had actually disappeared, thinking that she might have run away or been with friends. However, Brianna explained that she had contacted Brittany's friends and boyfriend, none of whom had any information on her whereabouts. Brianna was convinced that her sister Brittany had not run away from home because she was a diligent student and spent most of her time at the library. Brittany also never left the house without notice, and all of her personal belongings, including her phone and money, were still at home. Initially, the police suspected that Brittany had run away, but after speaking with Brianna, they began a thorough investigation. First, they went to Brittany's house to check her room for clues. They confirmed that her purse, containing her phone, ID, and makeup, was still there, but they did not find anything unusual. The police interviewed everyone who lived in the house and eventually ruled out the possibility that Brittany's relatives were involved in her disappearance. Next, they expanded their search to the surrounding area, checking nearby homes, examining property, and interviewing neighbors. They are looking for potential witnesses who may have seen or heard something suspicious. While searching, officers found that Brittany's house was located at the end of the road, near a wooded area. When they spoke to neighbors, they did not see anything suspicious, except for a woman who claimed to have seen Brittany walking down the road, heading toward the wooded area. Numerous police interviews with her family, neighbor, and teachers revealed that no one had anything bad to say about Brittany. Everyone spoke very highly of her. However, her sister, Brianna, mentioned that Brittany and her boyfriend, John, had been arguing frequently recently, including one on the day she went missing. This argument upset Brittany and she wanted to visit John that evening to make up. In order to better understand John's relationship with Brittany, the police asked him to come to the police station for questioning. At the station, John reported that his last phone conversation with Brittany took place on Sunday morning. At the time, he was at the beach with friends, which upset Brittany because she was not there. The argument resulted in them not speaking to each other since then. John also revealed that he and Brittany had recently broken up. Although she knew he was dating someone else, Brittany had a hard time accepting the breakup. According to John, he had no plans to see Brittany on the night she went missing and did not know she would come to his house. He attributed the breakup to a rumor that Brittany kissed another guy at a party, which he did not witness. However, this rumor prompted him to end their relationship and start dating someone else. John last saw Brittany on July 10th, the day before she disappeared, when she gave him a letter. In the letter, Brittany expressed her desire to make amends. After receiving permission from John, the police examined the letter, which contained Brittany's apology for her actions and her desire to remain friends with John. John appeared genuinely concerned and worried about Brittany's disappearance. Despite initial suspicions, the police had no evidence linking him to her disappearance. After passing a lie detector test, he was cleared as a suspect. However, John did provide the police with one important detail. He revealed that Brittany often took a shortcut through the woods behind her father's house to visit him. This new information adds complexity to the case, leading police to consider the possibility that Brittany attempted to reach John's house, a mile away, by walking through the woods on the night she disappeared. It was nighttime when Brittany went missing, making it likely that she got lost in the dark woods along the route she had taken. In order to find her, the police launched a search in the woods near her home. However, being in the woods at night is scary and dangerous, and the question of why a young girl would not be afraid to walk through the woods in the dark is puzzling. The search in the woods lasted for 3 days but yielded no results. Just when the investigation seemed to be stalled, the police received information from a woman who claimed to have been in a nearby park the night Brittany went missing. The woman said that she had been with her brother in the quiet, deserted park, with no cars in sight except one, a Chevrolet pickup truck with distinctive wheels that had driven past. The woman had noticed the car and even remembered its license plate number. After verifying the information, the police discovered that the car belonged to Anthony Geiger, 23. To determine if Anthony was involved in Brittany's disappearance, the police began to look into his past. Their findings revealed that Anthony was the ex-boyfriend of Bobby Joe, Brittany's older sister. According to Bobby Joe, they had broken up a month earlier due to Anthony's excessive jealousy, especially his excessive attention to Brittany. She began to suspect that Anthony, 23, had feelings for her younger sister Brittany, which eventually led her to end the relationship with him. Brittany's friends recalled that Anthony often looked at Brittany strangely and tried to flirt with her. During their last meeting at lunch, Anthony tried to flirt with Brittany again. This aroused the police's suspicions, so they brought Anthony in for questioning in connection with Brittany's disappearance. Anthony claimed that he was not in the area on the evening of July 11th until the following day, July 12th, after police had begun searching for Brittany. Although he admitted to being friends with Brittany and seeing her regularly at gatherings, he maintained that they were just friends and denied any attempts to flirt with her. Anthony claimed that he considered Brittany too young for him and only saw her as a friend. According to Anthony, he was at home with his new girlfriend on the evening of July 11th. His girlfriend confirmed his alibi, but because his home was close to Brittany's, police still considered him a suspect. Police returned to examine a letter Brittany had written to John and noticed disturbing signs that she was saying goodbye to her lover, raising concerns that she may have been planning to harm herself after breaking up with her boyfriend. Brittany's parents, however, disagreed with this theory, describing their daughter as intelligent and determined. They believed that Brittany's passion for life and ambitious plans were unlikely to be derailed by a breakup. As the investigation stalled, police turned to the media to gather information from witnesses and enlisted the help of nearby police departments. Brittany's parents also joined the search effort, as they grew increasingly frustrated with waiting and doing nothing. They decided to take action by canvassing the neighborhood, going door to door and asking locals about Brittany. The police returned to the starting point of the investigation, Brittany's home. It was puzzling that she had left her phone behind, especially since she had planned to meet her boyfriend. This led to new questions. Was she kidnapped from her own home? If so, was the perpetrator someone she knew and trusted? During a thorough search of the house, the police found something important in Brittany's room, namely her diary, which contained a handwritten letter. The police considered the contents of the letter to be extremely important because it revealed the truth about Brittany's family relationships, which had been shrouded in secrecy. In the letter, Brittany described her life in detail. She wrote about her friendships, boyfriends, schoolwork, and her difficulties with her family. Specifically, she wrote that she came from a dysfunctional family, that she visited her brother in prison every Sunday, that her mother was a drug addict and abandoned her when she was 9 years old, and that she now lived with her father, with whom she was not very close, and his various girlfriends. Despite acknowledging her own shortcomings and past mistakes, Brittany expressed her determination to break free from the cycle of dysfunctional family life. Her goal was to become a forensic scientist and make a positive impact by helping solve crimes. After reading the letter, the police investigation shifted its focus to Brittany's family, who were not initially considered suspects. Police began investigating each family member and discovered that a male massage parlor, which was actually a front for prostitution, was being operated from their home by Lori Peterson, a friend of Brittany's father. Neighbors knew that Lori did not provide legitimate massages but only intimate services for money, which she openly advertised by handing out business cards in the area. Neighbors also reported that suspicious people often gathered at Brittany's father's home to use illegal drugs. Several men, most of whom Lori did not know, came to use her services. It is possible that one of her clients abducted Brittany from her home. After Brittany went missing, more than 100 police officers were tasked with identifying everyone who had visited Joe Dunn's home over the past month. A week after Brittany went missing, on July 18th, police made a breakthrough when they arrested a suspect in connection with the murder. However, at the time of the arrest, Brittany's body had not been found, making the news extremely difficult for her family to accept, as they still held out hope that she was still alive. When police released a photo of the suspect, Brittany's mother, Deborah, recognized the man as 38-year-old Jack Fuller, a family friend of 20 years. Jack regularly attended family gatherings and had developed a close relationship with the family over time, to the point where his daughter was engaged to Brittany's brother, who is currently in custody. Her mother Deborah was shocked by the news, finding it hard to believe that Jack could be involved in such a crime. The fact that his children were friends with Brittany made the allegations even harder to accept, and the family continued to hold out hope that Brittany was still alive. Jack had a lengthy criminal history, with numerous incidents and arrests over the years. His crimes included breaking into vehicles, homes, and sheds, as well as using and selling drugs. He was known to be aggressive, once threatening someone with a baseball bat and fighting with police during a scuffle. Jack also had a habit of lying to police about his identity, which he did after being arrested for driving under the influence. Court records show that he was arrested more than a dozen times over a 10-year period and had served time in state prison for theft and violating his parole. Neighbors said they feared Jack and often chose not to report his crimes because of threats. He was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison at his most recent trial, but was released about a year before Brittany went missing. Brittany's parents believed Jack might have stolen money or jewelry to buy drugs. But they did not believe he would harm their daughter. However, after Jack was arrested, police revealed how they were able to connect him to Brittany's disappearance. The key piece of evidence began with a phone call to the police station. The caller reported that Jack had confided in him a few days earlier about having back pain after burying a body in sandy soil. According to the caller, Jack was confident that the body's location would not be discovered and even asked for advice on how deep to bury it to avoid being smelled by animals. The police invited the informant to the police station and asked him to wear a wiretap to meet Jack Fuller and talk to him about the crimes, including the murder. The informant agreed and wore a wiretap to the meeting. During the conversation, Jack confessed to the murder, saying that he had buried the victim's body in a remote location that would never be found. However, he did not mention the victim's name. In addition, Jack said that he needed to kill someone else who knew too much. Pointing to his friend Tommy, the police were sure that Tommy knew something important that could help solve the case, otherwise Jack would not want to eliminate him. The police took Tommy to the police station for questioning, but he initially refused to cooperate, claiming that he had no information about the case. However, the police knew he was not telling the truth. The police played Tommy a recorded conversation between Jack and another person, in which Jack revealed his desire to harm Tommy because he was likely to reveal information. Realizing that his safety was in danger, Tommy decided to work with the police. He explained that on the night Brittany went missing, he and Jack had been driving around the neighborhood smoking marijuana. They stopped in front of Brittany's house, and Jack decided to go in to talk to Brittany's father about some issues. When he entered, Jack discovered that Brittany was the only person there. 5 minutes after Jack left, he returned to the car with Brittany, who was sitting in the back seat. Tommy said he was confused by her sudden appearance and asked what was going on, but Brittany remained silent, avoiding eye contact. Jack only said that he would drive Tommy home. When they arrived at Tommy's house, Brittany got out of the back seat and moved into the front passenger seat after Tommy got out of the car. Jack then drove away with Brittany. The next day, Jack did not mention the events of the previous day when he met Tommy again. That day, Jack took his car to the car wash, where he washed it thoroughly inside and out. This behavior was unusual for Jack, as he had never done this before. The car wash attendant even joked about washing the car thoroughly, but Jack reacted aggressively, warning the attendant to mind his own business or he would be in danger. Tommy discovered that Brittany was missing and immediately suspected Jack of being involved. He directly asked Jack what happened to her, but Jack's response was aggressive and evasive. Jack claimed to have taken Brittany home, but his attitude was threatening, warning Tommy to ignore it or he would be in trouble. The police found Jack's behavior suspicious and decided to arrest him. Upon arrival, they found Jack holding a can of gasoline, apparently preparing to set the car on fire to destroy potential evidence. During the search, blood was found in the car, and forensics determined that it was Brittany's blood. After the police found out that Jack had visited a car wash after a trip with Brittany, they went there and confiscated the vacuum cleaner he was using. A major discovery was made when criminologists found blood-stained sand inside a vacuum cleaner, and subsequent testing confirmed that the blood was Brittany's. However, despite this incriminating evidence, Jack refused to confess to Brittany's abduction and murder. He also refused to discuss the matter further. The police interviewed all of Jack's acquaintances. Most of them believed that Jack was capable of murder, describing him as a reckless man. Many described him as someone who would do anything. Although Jack did not work anywhere, he always had money. A major revelation came during the investigation. A patrol officer reported seeing Jack's car parked on the side of the road near the woods on the night Brittany disappeared. At the time, police were unaware of Brittany's disappearance and approached Jack, who claimed he was looking for his dog that had run off into the woods. With this information, the search for the body focused on the area where police had seen Jack's car. A comprehensive search effort was launched, involving officers, K-9 units, helicopters, and volunteers. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, the search was unsuccessful in locating Brittany's body. Police believe Brittany needed a ride to her boyfriend's house that night and asked Jack for help. Jack agreed, but instead of taking her to her destination, he dropped off his friend Tommy and took advantage of the situation to attack and kill Brittany. Police needed to find her body to build a case against Jack. While police were trying to get Jack to confess, a vital witness came forward. A woman who had previously been held hostage by Jack for months contacted police, claiming that she might know where he had hidden Brittany's body. The woman was a former drug addict and Jack had held her hostage for months before she escaped. She had learned of Jack's habits during her captivity and knew his usual haunts. She remembered him showing her a location near power lines, which he claimed would be the perfect place to dump the body without being detected. Initially, police were skeptical of the woman's claims but began questioning her. She provided detailed information about the location, including its location in Lakewood and the condition of the soil. This information caught the attention of police, as it matched an earlier tip from an informant who reported that Jack had complained about the difficulty of burying a body in sandy soil. Police conducted a search in the area identified by the woman, about 3 miles from Brittany's residence. The search effort, involving more than 100 people each day, continued for several days despite initially being fruitless. However, a major breakthrough came when experts compared sand found in Jack's vacuum cleaner at the car wash with soil in the search area, confirming a perfect match. The discovery fueled police's determination to continue searching the densely wooded area on the border of Monmouth and Ocean counties. On the morning of Tuesday, July 27, 2004, 15 days after Brittany was reported missing, she was found by 3 New Jersey K-9 officers who had brought their dogs along on a weekend search to help. Brittany's body was found in a ditch, and a collar with Brittany's name on it was found around her neck. Police knew right away that they had finally found her. The medical examiner confirmed the body's identity as Brittany Gregory through an autopsy. However, due to significant decomposition and multiple injuries, including strangulation and severe head trauma, the medical examiner was unable to determine a sole cause of death. A prosecutor clarified that head trauma was not the primary cause of death. Brittany's body showed no obvious signs of sexual assault, but the medical examiner did not rule out rape. Jack eventually accepted the plea deal after discussing the option with his attorney, a decision that was also supported by Brittany's family, who wanted to avoid a lengthy and grueling trial. Brittany's mother explained that her primary motivation for the deal was not to seek the death penalty for Jack, as she believed that would be too easy an outcome for him. Instead, she wanted Jack to spend the rest of his life in prison, reflecting on his actions and suffering the consequences of his actions. According to Jack, the chain of events that led to the incident began when Brittany asked him to drive her to her boyfriend's house, which Jack agreed to. After dropping off his companion, Tommy, Jack was going to take Brittany to her destination. However, he stopped on the side of the road and started smoking marijuana, which angered Brittany. She screamed and slapped him on the hand. This provoked a violent reaction from Jack, who began punching Brittany. Jack confessed to punching Brittany in the face and head at least twice because she tried to interfere with his marijuana smoking. After the attack, Brittany began gasping for air and making gurgling noises while Jack continued to get high as blood poured from her nose and mouth. When he finally turned to her, Brittany had stopped breathing. He realized she was dead and decided to dispose of her body. However, Jack's testimony was not credible because the medical examiner found signs of strangulation that Jack did not mention. Additionally, he did not explain why he removed all of Brittany's clothes. The prosecution believed the crime was sexually motivated and a jury indicted Jack on February 9, 2005, for murder. Jack Fuller pleaded guilty on October 18, 2005, to intentionally causing serious injury resulting in death. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole on January 13. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Velma Barfield. Velma Barfield was born on October 29, 1932, in Eastover, North Carolina, but grew up near Fayetteville. She is the second child in a family of many children and lived a life of abject poverty in rural North Carolina. Her family worked on a small farm growing tobacco and cotton. Her father, Murphy Bullard, was worn down by the struggles of farm life and had a temper as unpredictable as the weather. Velma claimed that her father was physically and sexually abusive to her and her sisters, though other relatives denied this. Her mother, Lillian Bullard, often suffered the most from her husband's anger. In There, love is a luxury that is hard to come by. This causes Velma and her siblings to experience a childhood deprived of affection and constantly threatened with violence. When Velma was young, she noticed the financial differences between her family and her peers. This awareness led to her first criminal activities. She started taking small amounts of money from her father to buy items her classmates had. She became more and more thieving when she stole $80 from an elderly neighbor. When her father found out, he beat her severely, and Velma stopped stealing for the rest of her childhood. Raised in a Christian home, Velma found comfort in her Bible, holding on to her faith despite her troubled home life. She has always considered her early exposure to religion an important factor in her chaotic life. However, as she entered her teenage years, the emotional wounds from her upbringing began to shape who she would become. World War II caused upheaval around the world. The war was over, but it still caused her family more difficulties and stress. Like many of her generation, Velma was forced to grow up early. Her dreams and aspirations are often overshadowed by the demands of life and family responsibilities. However, during this challenging time, her resilience and determination emerged, traits that would come to define her both admirably and tragically. When Velma entered early adulthood, her desire for a life beyond the limitations of her home grew stronger. She dreamed of escaping. At 17, she left school. In her quest for love and stability, Velma joined Thomas Burke, a relationship that promised freedom but brought new challenges. By the age of 19, she already had 2 children, a son named Ronnie Burke and a daughter named Kim. The family lived happily in Parkton, North Carolina, for over 15 years. Velma's life with Thomas seemed to be a hard-won escape from the poverty and violence of her childhood. In 1965, everything changed when Thomas was involved in a serious car accident and sustained head injuries. To manage the intense pain and headaches, he turned to heavy drinking and drug use. His battle with alcohol echoed the struggles of Velma's father, bringing back her past traumas. The abuse and neglect she had promised never to repeat began to affect her own family. The strains of an unhappy marriage, the responsibilities of motherhood, and her past experiences bore down on her. Velma began working at a textile factory but had to leave due to health issues. She needed an urgent hysterectomy, which affected her confidence and femininity. After the operation, she experienced severe back pain and started using prescription drugs for relief. However, she gradually became addicted, which impaired her judgment and led to future tragedies. On April 4, 1969, Velma had an intense argument with her husband. Later that same day, while she and the children were out, the house caught fire. Thomas, who was inside, died from smoke inhalation, and the house was completely destroyed. Velma and the children moved in with her parents. A few months after her husband's death, Velma started dating Jennings Barfield. They got married in August 1970. One day, the couple had an argument, after which Jennings mysteriously fell ill. On March 21, 1971, he died of a heart attack. Velma moved back into her parents' home. Shortly after, her father passed away from lung cancer. In the summer of 1974, her mother experienced severe stomach pain and was hospitalized. After recovering, she returned home. In August 1974, a man Velma was dating died in a car accident. On December 30th of that year, her mother was hospitalized again with severe stomach symptoms. Unfortunately, doctors couldn't diagnose or treat her illness, and she died 2 hours later. No autopsy was conducted. A series of mysterious deaths occurred around Velma. Her son Ronnie expressed sadness and confusion, questioning why God would allow such suffering to befall his mother, a devoted Christian. Meanwhile, Velma's addiction created financial difficulties, leading her to make another poor decision: check forgery. However, her dishonest actions came at a cost. The people around her no longer believed her. In 1975, Velma Barfield was found guilty of writing 7 bad checks and received a 6-month prison sentence. She was let out after serving 3 months. Following her release in 1976, she found work caring for elderly individuals. Her first job was caring for Montgomery Edwards, 94, and Dolly, his 84-years-old wife in Lumberton, North Carolina. Her first job was caring for Montgomery Edwards, 94, and Dolly. Her first job was caring for Montgomery Edwards, 94, and Dolly, his 84-years-old wife in Lumberton, North Carolina. Montgomery passed away on January 29, 1977, after falling ill. Just over a month after her husband's death, in February, Dolly began showing signs of a stomach illness similar to the one that had affected Velma's mother. Dolly's condition took a turn for the worse, and she died on March 1. Following this, Velma took on the responsibility of caring for 76-year-old Record Lee, who had suffered a broken leg. On June 4, 1977, Record Lee's husband, John Henry, started having severe pain in my stomach and chest along with vomiting and diarrhea. Initially, doctors believed he was suffering from a severe stomach virus. Unfortunately, he did not survive and passed away later that month. Later in 1977, Velma began living with her boyfriend Roland Stewart Taylor, who was related to Dolly. He was a widower and a tobacco farmer. The two attended a Pentecostal revival meeting in Cumberland County, where Roland suddenly fell ill with severe stomach pain. He was hospitalized and died a few days later. Those close to Stewart grew suspicious as they witnessed his rapidly declining health. Ultimately, their suspicions led the authorities to investigate Velma, starting a chain of shocking truths that gradually came to light. An autopsy has been performed as part of the investigation into Roland's death. The process was thorough, with each test, interview, and piece of evidence increasing the suspicion surrounding Velma. In a criminal investigation, evidence often comes from a small clue, a moment of intuition, or a previously undiscovered connection. For the team seeking justice for Roland and other victims, this evidence came through forensic evidence. Traces of arsenic were found in Roland's body. Before the autopsy results were announced, Lumberton police received an anonymous call, allegedly from Velma's sister, claiming that Velma had poisoned Roland and others. Velma was subsequently arrested for the murder of Roland. Following Velma's arrest, Jennings Barfield's body was exhumed, and traces of arsenic were discovered. Velma carefully crafted her lies, but they began to unravel. The art of interrogation is very sophisticated, involves back-and-forth communication between investigators and suspects, in which each question is intended to uncover the hidden corners of the human mind. For Velma, the questions the interrogator asked reflected the very questions she had long been reluctant to answer. In the interrogation room, before the clear evidences, the truth was finally clarified. To seeking comfort, Velma consulted a spiritual advisor. She discovered the courage to face her past. For Velma, confessing was a journey back to her soul. Filled with regret, she began to speak. A series of facts, long hidden by fear, shame, poured out. Her confession deeply pained her family, who were unknowingly entangled in her deception. The woman they love commits terrible crimes, causing them to rethink forgiveness and their notions of right and wrong. Velma admitted to poisoning Montgomery and Dolly Edwards, John Henry, her mother Lillian, and her boyfriend Roland. Although arsenic was discovered in Jennings Barfield's body, Velma claimed she did not kill him. Her motive for murder was to steal money from the victim to satisfy her drug addiction. Additionally, she took out a loan in her mother's name. Each of her mistake decisions, stemmed from addiction, greatly affected her life and those close to her. Confronted with the risk of being exposed, Velma made a decision that permanently changed her life. The transition from one crime to another can be a slippery slope. She repeatedly committed the unimaginable. Velma attended her victims' funerals, appearing to genuinely grieve their deaths. The weight of the secret left her alone, but the human mind, skilled at self-preservation, often uses justification to protect itself from harsh realities and finds ways to rationalize even the darkest actions. Velma would steal money from her victims and then poison them if they became suspicious. To outsiders, she appeared to be a devout churchgoer, a caring nurse, and a loving family member. However, she was caught in a struggle between the remnants of her conscience and her overwhelming desire to avoid the consequences of her actions. She forged checks on her boyfriend Roland's account. When he presumably found out, she mixed arsenic-based rat poison into his beer and tea to keep her secret at any cost. At the trial, Velma's defense team argued that she was insane, but this argument was rejected. She seemed unfeeling, even laughing at the prosecutor and applauding the district attorney after his closing argument. The prosecution described Velma as not being a churchgoer as she claimed, but as a calculating murderer, driven by dark motives, stating that she was responsible for her actions and deserved the harshest punishment. Conversely, the defense argued that she was a troubled individual, trapped by addiction, abuse, and uncontrollable circumstances. They emphasized that her mental health struggles are a factor that could reduce her responsibility for the crimes. In the realm of law and justice, the truth is often more complicated, deeply intertwined with human emotions. She confessed to committing 6 murders, but was only found guilty of the first-degree murder of Roland. In December 1978, the jury identified aggravating circumstances and sentenced her to death. At the time, there was no designated holding area for female death row prisoners, and Velma was the only female on death row in North Carolina. As a result, she was held at Central Prison in Raleigh, in a section for prisoners prone to escape and those with mental illnesses. Later, a unit specifically for female death row inmates was created at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women. While on death row, Velma stopped using drugs and expressed regret for how pills had clouded her judgment and damaged her moral compass. In the solitude of her cell, she begins to confront her past. The nights were long, the faces of the victims haunted her dreams, and the silence intensified her thoughts and regrets. In these moments of reflection, Velma became fully aware of what she had done, the lives she had taken, and the pain she had caused. Her discussions with the prison chaplain were not just about appealing for a reduced sentence, but also about understanding atonement and the challenging journey of forgiving herself. While in jail, Velma admitted that she had never been a true Christian, her faith had been superficial. However, as she awaited her trial, she sincerely embraced Jesus, receiving forgiveness and salvation. In her autobiography, she wrote that throughout her life she was burdened by guilt because she did not know she could do better. What was more amazing, she said, was that Jesus was willing to be her friend. Even then, she could talk to him, and he listened. Velma became a dedicated Christian and spent her last 6 years helping other inmates find faith. Velma became a supportive figure for them in her unique way. Her active involvement in the Christian community, Velma had her sentence changed from death to life in prison. She wrote letters to Governor Jim Hunt, arguing that her newfound Christian faith should be considered a mitigating factor. Many Christians across the United States supported her, including evangelists Billy and Ruth Graham, with Ruth regularly exchanging letters with Velma. However, the victims' families thought that Velma's conversion was just a fraud and a ploy for her to avoid the death penalty. They see her as a cold-blooded woman who killed their loved ones. Despite this, Velma remained a devoted mother and grandmother. She cherished family visits every weekend and enjoyed spending time with her children and grandchildren. In 1980, psychiatrist Selwyn Rose evaluated Velma and testified in state court. He stated that she suffered from 3 disorders: multiple prescription drug abuse, an underlying personality disorder, and depression. However, Dr. Rose felt he never had a complete understanding of Velma. Velma's son, Ronnie Burke, asked her if she had killed Thomas. She responded that she was sure she probably did. She couldn't remember clearly but believed she had left a cigarette or match in the bed and then closed the door, leaving her drunk Thomas to sleep in their burning house. Velma admitted to the pastor that she had killed Jennings. She expressed relief that everything had come to light because she feared she might poison her grandchildren. Velma did not understand why she committed the murder and felt unable to stop herself. The governor of North Carolina denied Velma's clemency request, stating that her victims died in a torturous manner. An appeal was made based on testimony from Dr. Dorothy Lewis, a psychiatry professor at New York University School of Medicine. She claimed that Velma suffered from dissociative identity disorder and had shown patterns of manic-depressive disorder earlier in her life. Velma filed her final appeal on October 30, 1984, in the North Carolina Supreme Court, arguing that she was incompetent at her original trial due to her drug addiction. This appeal was rejected in federal court. The day before her execution, she instructed her attorney, Jimmy Little, to withdraw all appeals. In her last hours, Velma chose to reflect and pray, finding solace in her faith. During that time, the renowned pastor Billy Graham spoke with her over the phone, saying that in a way, he envied her because she was going to get to heaven before he did. Before her execution on November 2, 1984, at Central Prison in Raleigh, Velma released a statement expressing her remorse for the pain she had caused. She acknowledged that everyone had suffered, including all the connected families, and offered her apologies. She also extended her gratitude to everyone who had supported her over the past 6 years, expressing appreciation for her family, her attorneys, and all those who had shown her kindness, including the prison department staff. She was thankful for everything they had done for her during those 6 years. She chose cheese doodles and a Coca-Cola for her last meal. She had her final visits with family and friends and mentioned that entering the gas chamber at 2 a.m. would be her gateway to heaven. She wore pink pajamas for the execution, with a stethoscope and heart monitor attached to her chest. A wheeled gurney was brought to her cell, and she was strapped onto it before being taken to the execution chamber shortly before 2 a.m. Outside the prison. Several groups of protesters gathered, including both supporters and opponents of the death penalty. Some protesters criticized Governor Hunt for lacking mercy and compassion, believing that the condemned could still contribute positively by helping fellow inmates while serving life in prison. Inside the prison, inmates banged rhythmically on their cell windows as they awaited the execution. Approximately 80 supporters of capital punishment gathered to cheer and applaud. The execution was carried out by 3 volunteers, with one intravenous line serving as a dummy so that none of the volunteers knew who actually delivered the lethal dose. Velma was pronounced dead at 2:15 a.m., 15 minutes after receiving the injection of proton bromide. Witnesses to the execution said Velma died peacefully, with no signs of pain. Around 300 death penalty opponents held a silent vigil, holding candles that were extinguished at the moment of her execution at 2:25 a.m. Velma's body was transported by ambulance to a medical school, fulfilling her wish to donate her organs for transplantation. She was later buried in a small cemetery in North Carolina beside her first husband, Thomas. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren Hugelmayer. Raleigh, a rapidly growing city in northeastern North Carolina, is known for its rich history and beautiful oak trees. However, on September 1, 2017, a horrific crime rocked the city. That morning, at approximately 1 a.m., the Raleigh Police Department's 911 dispatch center received a call from 28-year-old Matthew Phelps. Phelps was distraught and said he had accidentally stabbed his wife, Lauren, to death while he was dreaming. He then suddenly woke up to find his wife lying in a pool of blood on the floor. "I took too much cough medicine and it affected me," Matthew explained to the operator, saying that it could cause a cold but it made him feel better. He admitted that he had been unable to sleep at night. The operator asked Matthew to check on his wife, asking if she was breathing and if there was any visible movement in her chest. Matthew replied, "No, she didn't move." Then he noticed the blood on him and said it was dry, not wet. During the conversation, Matthew finally revealed the reason behind his strange behavior and revealed the events that led up to the incident. Patrol officers from the Raleigh Police Department arrived at Matthew's home on Patuxent Street. Upon entering the home, they found Lauren, 29, lying motionless on the floor, a bloody knife on the bed, and cough drops on the bathroom counter. Despite showing no signs of life, Lauren was taken to the hospital by paramedics, where she was pronounced dead. The investigation into Lauren's death led police to have conflicting theories about whether it was an accident or a targeted murder, after which they brought Matthew in for further questioning. An autopsy revealed the horrific extent of Lauren's injuries, with 123 stab wounds, including 44 to the face and the rest to the head, neck, and arms. The couple's social media profiles, which contain hundreds of photos, show a happy relationship. Matthew has a clean record, and from the outside, they appear to be a happy, carefree couple. However, it cannot be ruled out that Matthew's actions were influenced by a large dose of cough syrup. Can cause euphoria, delusions, and often make people act strangely. To unravel the mystery behind the murder, police dug into the couple's past. Lauren Hugelmayer was born on June 9, 1988, in Los Angeles County to a deeply religious family. Lauren had a normal childhood with her two older sisters, Beth and Brianna. Lauren graduated from Swain County High School in North Carolina in 2007. She went on to earn a degree in business administration and management from Appalachian State University in 2011. After completing her studies, she worked as an auditor at Quintiles. She also started a side business selling Scentsy products. She was very passionate about Scentsy, and her Facebook page was filled with photos and videos of her side business, including trips she took with other Scentsy sellers. Lauren was a member of Hope Lutheran Church, where she was a Sunday school teacher and taught children and youth at the church. In her mid-20s, Lauren reconnected with Matthew Phelps, a classmate of hers from high school. Lauren and Matthew initially lost touch after high school when he transferred schools, and Lauren's family moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. Notably, their childhood experiences were very different. While Lauren grew up in a loving family, Matthew was not so fortunate. Matthew's parents abandoned him at birth, leaving him to live with his grandparents from a young age. Matthew's parents divorced shortly after he was born. His biological father was not interested in him, and his mother remarried several times but never gave Matthew a family or a lasting relationship with any stepfather. Matthew grew up without parents, and despite his grandparents' best efforts to love and care for him, he felt a deep emotional void. This could have led to behavioral problems from an early age. He began hanging out with bad friends and developed a habit of abusing drugs and alcohol during his high school years. Matthew and his friends were known to regularly use Coricidin, the same drug he claimed to have taken before attacking his wife. Of course, high doses do not cause a high, but Matthew and his friends took advantage of it anyway. Because of his addiction, Matthew's grandparents were forced to withdraw him from public high school and enroll him in a private Christian academy. This was successful, and Matthew improved significantly, earning better grades and eventually graduating. He then attended Clear Creek Baptist Bible College in Pineville, Kentucky, and graduated in 2011. Matthew was the one who came across Lauren's photo and realized they knew each other. After some hesitation, Matthew contacted Lauren through Instagram, liking every photo she posted. The two began talking, and their text messages quickly turned into long, late-night phone calls. Before long, both Matthew and Lauren were falling for each other. The two began a long-distance relationship, as Matthew was still living in Kentucky at the time. Despite living hundreds of miles apart, their relationship began to develop quickly. After a while, Matthew tried to visit Lauren and eventually moved to North Carolina to be with her. Since Lauren was very close to her family, she was happy to introduce Matthew to them. Most of her family members welcomed him, trusting Lauren's choice. They saw him as a kind man who truly cared about their daughter. Lauren's mother, Lori, thought Matthew was the right person for Lauren. However, Lauren's father, Dale, had reservations about the relationship. His concerns may have stemmed from his protective fatherly instincts, or perhaps it was intuition. In Dale's opinion, Matthew was moving too fast and that he was likely hiding a secret from Lauren. Despite his suspicions, Dale could not pinpoint exactly what made him feel uncomfortable about Matthew. However, he chose to put his feelings aside because his daughter seemed genuinely happy. Eventually, Matthew became a part of the family. However, during a night out at Lauren's parents' house, he revealed a shocking secret. He had been in a failed marriage before he dated Lauren, but refused to share any other details. This confession raised concerns about his honesty and intentions, especially given his young age at the time of the divorce and the fact that he had kept it from Lauren for months. Lauren's family were particularly concerned and they noticed his body language seemed suspicious. Despite their reservations, Lauren's love for Matthew remained unwavering, and her family chose to support the couple as they continued their relationship. Matthew and Lauren eventually got engaged in 2015. The engagement party left a lasting impression on family and friends. Matthew's mother had a strained relationship with Lauren, which was evident when she wore a white dress to the wedding to show her disapproval. Despite this, the event was a success and the couple married the following year. The couple were avid Star Wars fans, and they incorporated this theme into their wedding. With their love for each other and their new life together, Lauren and Matthew seemed to be very happy. For Lauren, married life exceeded her expectations. She had her own home, a fulfilling job, and a loving husband who made her smile every day. However, the dream marriage soon turned into an ugly reality when Matthew began to show his true colors. Just a few months after their marriage, Matthew had difficulty finding a job, and when he did find one, he quickly left without much explanation. During his unemployment, Matthew spent most of his time playing video games. Meanwhile, Lauren worked multiple jobs to support the family. This created significant financial stress, which was exacerbated by Matthew's overspending on expensive electronics and gaming equipment. Lauren had saved about $10,000, but Matthew spent it all very quickly, spending $1,200 on iTunes and Xbox subscriptions alone. He even stole money from Lauren's purse if she refused to pay for his lavish lifestyle. Lauren had a decent amount of savings in her bank account before she married Matthew. However, by the time she died, there was only $1,000 left. In addition to Matthew's spending habits, there were other problems in the relationship. Lauren also had problems with Matthew's family. During a visit to his family home 6 months after the wedding, his mother was cold to Lauren and the couple argued the entire time. As a result, Lauren felt unwelcome and isolated. The disagreements mainly revolved around Matthew's spending habits, which hindered their ability to pursue their shared goals and dreams. As mentioned earlier, the couple was very fond of Star Wars and were trying to save money to take a trip to Disney World. However, Matthew would spend the little money they had saved on his own selfish habits. And Lauren suspected that Matthew was having an affair with their neighbor, with whom he frequently socialized. One evening, while Lauren was cooking dinner and talking to her sister Beth on the phone, Matthew came home from work, but instead of going with Lauren, he went out with his neighbor. He then sent Lauren a text saying he was having a great time eating with his neighbors and told her to go out to dinner alone, which further raised her suspicions. Although Matthew spent a lot of time with their neighbor, he was extremely possessive of Lauren. His possessiveness led to frequent arguments over a man at church whom Matthew suspected of flirting with Lauren. Matthew's suspicions of Lauren only increased the distance between them. He often used his past experience of being dumped by his ex-wife, who had met another man on a mission trip, to justify his insecurities. However, this justification did nothing to help their relationship, which was deteriorating. Lauren had confided in loved ones about her desire to leave Matthew less than a year after they were married because of his controlling nature. However, driven by her faith, Lauren was determined to make their marriage work and put thoughts of divorce aside. As a result, she continued to project a vision of a perfect marriage on social media, posting pictures and videos of the couple with affectionate captions that were in stark contrast to the reality of their troubled marriage. Matthew decided to return to college to become a pastor, hoping that this would save his marriage. However, his wife Lauren was not impressed and was fed up with his thoughtless and immature behavior. Lauren eventually decided to leave Matthew. But she would never get the chance to carry out that decision. Instead, she was brutally murdered by her husband in their bed. The investigation quickly pieced together the events. The crime scene appeared to be staged. The knife and cough syrup were carefully placed, and Matthew had only a small amount of blood on him, mostly on his shoes and a few drops on his shirt. This contrasted with the brutal nature of the crime, in which Lauren had been stabbed 123 times. The lack of blood splatter suggested that Matthew had washed himself, which disproved his claim that he was in a delusional state at the time of the murder. Traces of blood were found throughout the apartment after a luminol test, suggesting it had been cleaned up before police arrived. Matthew was notably expressionless when police encountered him at the scene of the crime. Cough syrup manufacturer Bayer later issued a statement denying any link between the syrup and the violent behavior. A medical examination found that the amount of the drug in Matthew's system at the time of the murder was minimal, making it unlikely to have influenced his actions. Despite this, Matthew maintained that the cough syrup was the cause, prompting police to continue searching for further evidence. The investigation into Matthew's motives led police to his diary, in which he detailed his relationship problems with Lauren, expressing low self-esteem and insecurity due to feeling unwelcome by her family. Despite Lauren's best efforts, Matthew never felt like he fit in well with her family. The neighbor Lauren suspected was related to Matthew, told police that they were just friends and had grown close through conversations about anxiety and depression. She also shared that, as they spent more time together, Matthew began discussing darker topics such as suicide and death, perhaps planning to take the licensed gun he knew she had in the house. Further investigation of Matthew's phone revealed a suspicious online search history. The searches included queries about the intoxicating effects of cough syrup, such as its ability to cause a foggy feeling and whether other people had ever been high. These searches alone suggested that Matthew may have planned the crime in advance and considered using cough syrup as a defense strategy. While this evidence was circumstantial and not enough to build a solid case, the discovery of a secret Instagram account, at @Marty_Radical, where Matthew posted dark content inspired by a movie, provided another important piece of evidence. Evidence showed that Matthew had a fascination with serial killers. This was evident in his portrayal of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho and his apparent interest in understanding what it was like to take another person's life, which he shared with a friend. Before killing Lauren, Matthew posted a photo on Instagram with the statement, "Everyone thinks I'm a serial killer," and the hashtag, "Found an angel to kill." His Instagram account frequently referenced demons and evil. When the trial began, prosecutors felt they had enough evidence to prove that Matthew had intentionally killed Lauren. However, the defense argued that this action was out of character for Matthew and attributed his behavior to his unstable and depressed mental state at the time. To support this claim, they presented several letters from Matthew's co-workers to the judge, asserting that this was out of character for Matthew. The prosecution called Matthew's ex-wife to testify, contesting his earlier claims that she had cheated on him. Instead, she claimed that Matthew had been unfaithful throughout their marriage. Their marriage, which suffered from similar problems to his marriage to Lauren, included his refusal to work, overspending, and not contributing to their shared goals. These problems eventually led to their separation. Matthew ultimately accepted a plea deal and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, a felony punishable by death or life in prison without parole, to avoid the death penalty. When asked to confirm his understanding of the plea, Matthew replied, "Yes, sir." He also admitted to stabbing his wife, Lauren Hugelmayer, multiple times. On October 5, 2018, the case against Matthew Phelps came to an end when he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At his sentencing, Matthew addressed Lauren's family and apologized, saying that he deeply regretted taking Lauren's life, which he admitted had deeply affected many people. Lauren's family did not accept Matthew's apology, finding it hollow and insincere. In response, a family member expressed anger and hatred towards Matthew, stating that they could never forgive him for his insensitive actions. To this day, Lauren's family still feels guilty for not intervening when they knew the relationship had taken a turn for the worse. To help others like their beloved Lauren, they founded an organization called Lauren's Light, which raises awareness about abusive relationships and domestic violence.